Chapter 592. With regards to Hades' appearance, the Lord Go didn't seem to be too surprised. He was just a little bewildered. After yawning, the Lord Go continued to lie down and began to snore. After comforting himself, Hades' face regained its melancholy. He landed and followed you into the restaurant. As soon as he entered the restaurant, the Nether King looked around curiously. The interior of the restaurant was extremely clean, without a speck of dust. The air was filled with the fragrance of the dishes, and the Nether King couldn't help but sniff. Pulling a chair and sitting down, Hades grinned and continued to look around the restaurant. All of a sudden, his eyes fell on the Lord Go, who was sleeping under the path-understanding tree in the distance. TSK. This black dog is really fat. Its whole body is full of meat. It's really an eyesore. In comparison, that mangy dog is more handsome. Hades rubbed his chin, commenting on a black dog. He stood up, strolling in front of the Lord Go. With his hands clasped behind his back, he looked up and down. After a while, he nodded as if nothing had happened. But I have to say, although your dog is a little fat, it's still a little similar to that mangy dog. Their auras are almost the same. It's amazing. Hades turned his head and said to Buffon, who had just walked out of the kitchen. Buffon glanced at him and didn't bother to pay attention to him. If this clown wanted to provoke the Lord Go, then let him be. Anyway, he was Hades, with thick skin and thick flesh. He wouldn't be smashed to death by the Lord Go's paw. Buffon walked to the door and closed it. After that, he turned around and returned to the kitchen. Hades was already used to Buffon's coldness. That young man was definitely jealous of his handsomeness. Hades squatted down and reached out to touch Lord Go's head. Although it's chubby, it feels really good, Hades praised as he touched it. Lord Go's soft and clean dog fur was very special to the touch. You sat on the Netherworld ship, swinging her long, white legs. The corner of her mouth twitched as she looked at Hades as though she was looking an idiot. Was this old fellow a clown? As expected, the Lord Go slowly opened his eyes and sighed. He glanced at Hades and finally spoke. Old man, if you don't move your hand away, the Lord Go, will not be polite anymore. A gentle and magnetic voice resounded. Hades was stunned, and his eyes widened in the next moment. Holy sh*t. This fat dog is really that mangy dog? How did this guy become so fat? He was speechless. It turned out that this old fellow really didn't recognize him. The Lord Go's head was full of black lines. He raised his exquisite dog paw and slapped Hades' face. Hades instantly let out a miserable howl. You mangy dog, if you hit someone's face, you will give birth to a child without an asshole. You're just jealous of this Hades' handsomeness. Hades' body seemed to teleport as he dodged the Lord Go's paw. Rumble. The illusionary void trembled. Under the Lord Go's paw, the illusionary void was distorted. It was enough to show the power of that paw. The Nether King still had a lingering fear in his heart. If this black dog had really slapped his face with its paw, his handsome face would have been disfigured. This mangy dog was still as shameless as ever. Old fellow, did you come with your real body, not a clone? Lord Dog looked in surprise at the Nether King who had dodged his paw. Then he licked his paw and said calmly, You mangy dog, don't call me old fellow. I'm still young. Hades tidied up his clothes and muttered to the Lord Go with a stern face. The Lord Go rolled his eyes. Shameless old fellow, you're already tens of thousands of years old, yet you're still pretending to be young. Why haven't you died? Because of your own thick skin. You fat mangy dog, you're as fat as a ball. Why don't you die because of your own fat? Hades retorted, unwilling to be outdone. What? Lord Go, is this what you call plump? You're not satisfied? Let's go out and have a fight. The Lord Go stood up. The fat on his body shook as he looked at Hades with his doggy eyes. Fight? Why would I be afraid of you? Today, if I don't beat off 0.5 kilogram of fat on your body, I will change my surname. Hades flipped his thick black hair and said gloomily, This old fellow, savage. The Lord Go's nostrils slightly flared as he coldly stared at Hades. The man and the dog stared at each other in silence. It was as if there were lightning bursting in each other's eyes. You swung her white and tender legs, looking at them with an expressionless face. Hades swayed its chicken, but as it walked, it also raised its head and widened its round eyes, looking at the funny man and the dog. However, just as the two of them were confronting each other, a fragrant aroma suddenly wafted out of the kitchen. The Lord Go's eyes instantly lit up. He snorted and turned his head away, ignoring Hades. Then he strode elegantly like a cat, swaying past Hades. Finding a spot, he slapped his doggy paw on the table. Hades sneered, flipping his thick black hair. This mangy dog was scared. However, the Nether King's nose twitched as he smelled a rich fragrance. This fragrance caused him to be stunned. He turned his head, looking at the direction where the aroma was coming from. He saw a thin figure slowly walking out of the kitchen. Bufong was holding 2 dishes in his hands. Hot steam, accompanied by the aroma, diffused from the porcelain plates. "Blackie, it's time to eat," Bufong said calmly. He walked in front of the table, putting down the dishes in his hands. A plate of sweet and sour ribs and a plate of dragon blood rice. The sweet and sour ribs is Blackie's, and the dragon blood rice is you's, Bufong said. You and Blackie were already sitting in their seats, looking at Bufong with anticipation. The thick aroma of the sweet and sour ribs wafted on the table. The sparkling sweet and sour ribs stimulated one's appetite. The Lord Go stuck out his tongue, snorting. He was so excited. The sweet and sour ribs were the best. Although the spicy strips weren't bad, eating too much would cause internal heat. You didn't say anything. She reached out her hand, grabbing the dragon blood rice and stuffing it into her mouth. She ate with a fierce manner. Hades looked at the scene with a dumbfounded face. He was a little dazed. What happened? What happened? What were they eating? Why did they look so delicious? Munch, munch. The fat on Lord Go's body jiggled. He nibbled on the sweet and sour ribs on the porcelain plate, squinting his dog eyes. He was so happy that he could fly away. While chewing, Lord Dog glanced sideways at the Nether King, who was in a daze. The corners of his mouth curled into a mocking smile. Gulp. Hades swallowed his saliva. Looking at the sweet and sour ribs, his heart was full of desire. Looking at Lord Go and Yu's table manners, he couldn't stay calm anymore. Young man, what about me? Is there anything for this king to eat? They all have some. I so handsome. I'm sure I have some too, right? Hades smiled kindly at Bufong. Bufong was bewildered. He looked at Hades as if he was looking at an idiot. Order whatever you want to eat. Tell you that the menu is on the wall. Our restaurant will set the price, and we will not cheat anyone, Bufong said. After saying that, he turned around and went into the kitchen. He had cooked sweet and sour ribs and dragon blood rice for Lord Go and Yu. Now he was going to prepare the heaven-grade Buddha jumps over the wall soup. That was an important matter that would determine whether he could advance or not. Hades looked at Bufong's back, which was gradually disappearing into the shadows of the kitchen, and he pursed his lips. He turned his head to look at the menu that Bufong had mentioned. When he saw it, his eyes instantly widened. Naughty. You're such a naughty young man. Isn't this chili strip only 1,500 crystals? Why are you selling it to I for 20,000 crystals each? Are you trying to kill a pig? Hades looked as if he had experienced inhumane torture. His eyes were bloodshot. He stared intently at the menu. That's right. On the menu, it was clearly marked. Spicy strips, 1,500 crystals. 1,500 crystals. Puff. Hades was so upset that he wanted to vomit blood. Was he too naive? He actually foolishly spent 20,000 crystals to buy a chili strip. The main point was that he had borrowed those 20,000 crystals using his handsome face. What a huge loss. He had even lost his underwear. Youngsters nowadays are simply too mischievous. Hades' heart ached so much that he found it hard to breathe. Munch, munch. You didn't seem to be surprised at all. She looked at Hades' sorrowful and indignant appearance with an expressionless face. She chewed unhurriedly and said, Old man, what do you want? Hades felt as if he was crying. He wanted to order something, but where would he get the crystals? Can I buy it on credit? I guarantee with my handsome face that I will definitely return the crystals. Hades looked at Yu's greasy mouth and looked at the fragrant dragon blood rice. He swallowed a mouthful of saliva and said, "Can your face be eaten?" Yu rolled her eyes and said. Hades felt as if his little heart was pierced by an invisible arrow. At this time, Bufong walked out of the kitchen, leisurely. In his hand was a small blue and white porcelain bowl. "Adi, come. It's time to eat." "I almost forgot about you," Bufong said calmly. Adi, who was sitting on the floor to watch the show, heard that he had food to eat. He instantly clucked excitedly, stood up, shook his butt, and ran to Bufong's feet. His small eyes were shining as he stared at Bufong. The Nether King looked at this scene with a face full of despair. Looking at the little chick that was pecking at the dragon blood rice, there were 10,000 fat black dogs galloping in his heart. He couldn't even be compared to a chicken. Have you decided what dish to order? Our restaurant's dishes are discounted, and we do not cheat anyone. Please feel at ease and order," Bufong said seriously. Snort. Looking at Bufong's serious eyes, Hades felt as if he was about to spit out a mouthful of blood. Never would he have thought that Hades would finally be able to eat the delicious spicy strip. Although Hades didn't have any crystals, he suddenly remembered that he had some heaven and earth treasures. When he took out a bottle of spirit liquid that was filled with a black crystal and asked Bufong if he could buy the spicy strip, Bufong was slightly stunned. He really hadn't met anyone who used spirit liquid to exchange for dishes. Bufong took the spirit liquid from Hades' hand, and the majestic spirit energy and the unique sour taste of the spirit liquid blew over him. "This is a heaven and earth treasure from the netherworld, black spirit plum juice. Although it isn't the most precious kind, after drinking it, it can still cleanse a person's body and strengthen their physical strength," Hades introduced. Although this bottle of black spirit plum juice didn't seem like a big deal, it should be known that even experts at the peak of the divine physique echelon realm would have a hard time plucking the black spirit plum juice. This was because the black spirit plum juice was guarded by a kind of netherworld spirit beast, the dark viper, which was extremely difficult to deal with. Only Hades, who had nothing better to do, would pluck so many of them, make them into juice, and drink it for fun. In the netherworld, this black spirit plum juice was already extremely precious. When Hades took out the black spirit plum juice, his heart ached. Bufong tasted a small mouthful of the black spirit plum juice, and his eyes slightly lit up. The sour taste with a hint of bitterness drilled into his stomach. It made Bufong's entire body energetic. This kind of taste reminded Bufong of an extremely delicious fruit juice from his previous life. "Isn't this just a high-concentration sour plum juice?" Bufong muttered. In the end, he allowed Hades to exchange for a dish. When Hades pinched a spicy strip and sniffed it, he almost burst into tears. It really wasn't easy. Lord Go and you looked at the spicy strip in Hades' hand and rolled their eyes. Both of them burped and returned to the path understanding tree to rest. As for Hades, who had an intoxicated expression on his face, he didn't pay any attention. Bufong, on the other hand, carried the black spirit plum juice back to the kitchen. He planned to first mix the black spirit plum juice into a delicious sour plum juice. He also started to prepare the heaven-grade Buddha jumps over-the-wall soup. Chapter 593. Bufong took the black spirit plum juice he got from Hades and returned to the kitchen. He poured the black spirit plum juice out of the black crystal jar and poured it into a porcelain bowl, filling it to the brim. The black spirit plum juice was incomparably black. Upon smelling it, there was a sourness that made one salivate. It also had a special fragrance, similar to the sour plum soup in his previous life. However, the smell was even stronger. This was also why, after tasting the black spirit plum juice, the sour plum soup appeared in Bufong's mind. This black spirit plum juice could also be made into a sour plum soup. Bufong was quite interested in it. If it could be made into a sour plum soup, it would be a special drink. In Bufong's restaurant, there were very few drinks. Other than wine, there was only wine. It was not bad to add a fruit juice drink. Green smoke curled around his hand, and the black turtle constellation wok appeared. Fong placed the wok on the stove and opened his mouth to spit out a golden flame. The flame entered the bottom of the wok and instantly emitted a high temperature, heating up the black turtle constellation wok. After pouring the black spirit plum juice into the wok, Fong lowered the temperature of the 10,000 bestial flames and began to simmer it. On the other side, he began to take out spirit herbs from the system's dimensional storage. These spirit herbs were all found in the Heaven's Secret territory. Although their medicinal effects were not very strong, they were not weak either. They were perfect for making sour plum soup. The selection of spirit herbs was actually a matter of consideration. Fong searched for a while before choosing a flower-type spirit herb. He used the dragon bone kitchen knife to grind the spirit herb and poured it into the black turtle constellation wok. Of course, it wasn't just a single spirit herb. There were also spirit herbs that looked like tree roots and a red spirit fruit. After pouring all these spirit herbs into the black turtle constellation wok, the spirit herbs began to boil. Gurgle. The black spirit plum juice in the wok quickly boiled, releasing some sweet and sour bubbles. Fong took out a huge spirit fruit. The spirit fruit was very big, about the size of a human head. Fong cracked a hole on the spirit fruit, allowing the sweet, transparent juice to flow out into the black turtle constellation wok, diluting the black spirit plum juice. The originally pitch-black black spirit plum juice gradually became a little thinner. After adding the spirit juice, Fong increased the intensity of the 10,000 bestial flames. In an instant, the sour plum juice in the wok began to boil. Steaming hot air surged, and the sweet and sour white gas kept surging up. Fong took a deep breath, and a sweet and sour taste immediately drilled into his mouth, causing him to salivate. Not bad. This sweet and sour taste is just right. It won't make you burp like vinegar, but it won't be too light either. Fong praised. He had to admit that this black spirit plum juice was really good stuff. If Hades had such a good item, he should have taken it out earlier. If he had taken it out earlier, Fong would have given him a spicy strip. Exchanging a spicy strip for this sour plum juice wasn't a loss at all. When the sour plum juice in the wok completely turned red, Fong knew that it was about time to take it out of the wok. The sour plum juice that was taken out of the wok was actually not finished yet. It was still lacking a little sweetness, which was the key to making the sour plum juice so delicious. In fact, this step was the best way to add honey, but Fong didn't have anything like honey on hand. Thus, he could only add the rock candy provided by the system. Swish! Hot steam rose up from the ground. Fong poured the sour plum juice into a porcelain bowl. Looking at the ruby-like sparkling and translucent sour plum juice, Fong was quite satisfied. However, Fong didn't plan to drink it so quickly. If the sour plum juice was too hot, it wouldn't taste good. If it was chilled, then the sour and refreshing taste would make one's pores shrink. He placed the sour plum juice aside to cool. Fong turned around and prepared to cook the heaven-grade Buddha jumps over the wall soup. The heaven-grade Buddha jumps over the wall soup is much more difficult to cook than the ordinary Buddha jumps over the wall soup. This is because the quality and grade of the ingredients used are much higher, and the spiritual energy is very dense. It is extremely difficult to control it well. Fong rubbed his chin and pondered. After pondering for a long time, he took out the ingredients from the system's dimensional storage. A pitch-black true dragon fruit emitted a faint spiritual energy fluctuation, and it seemed as though there was a small dragon drilling around the surface of the fruit. He also took out some precious spirit herbs, as well as some high-grade spirit beast meat. Fong also took out a piece of the black flood dragon meat that guarded the true dragon fruit. The grade of this black flood dragon was very high, and its meat was naturally the best choice for cooking the Buddha jumps over the wall soup. Fong also took out the precious phoenix egg. However, after carefully examining the phoenix egg, Fong put it away in the end. He felt that if he used the phoenix egg to cook the heaven-grade Buddha jumps over the wall soup, it would really be a waste. Ingredient after ingredient was taken out by Fong. The grade of these ingredients was extremely high, and if others saw them, they would feel extremely frightened. Oh, I still lack a chicken claw. Should I borrow it from 80? Bufong looked at all the ingredients that he had prepared and pondered for a moment. Thus, Bufong turned around and walked out of the kitchen. Outside the kitchen, 80 was focused on pecking at the dragon blood rice grain by grain. In the distance, Hades's face was filled with enjoyment as he sucked on a chili strip in his mouth. His actions were somewhat wretched. After Blackie ate and drank its fill, it laid down under the path-understanding tree and slept. You also went into the netherworld ship to rest. 80 was happily eating the dragon blood rice. Previously, it thought that coming to this restaurant would be its disaster. However, it did not expect that this restaurant would be so wonderful. It accidentally ate until it became fat. However, it was good to be fat. As a chicken with ideals, how could it not become fat? As a chicken, it was proud to be fat. 80 wiggled its chicken, but clucked a few times before continuing to work on the dragon blood rice. All of a sudden, 80's body stiffened, and it slowly raised its head. When it turned around, it saw Bufong, whose eyes were shining, staring at it expressionlessly. That gaze, 80 was too familiar with it. As an 8 treasures chicken that had lived for so long, 80 was very familiar with gazes. In the past, Nangon Wuk looked at it with the same gaze. In the end, one of its chicken wings was snatched away. From then on, it deeply remembered that gaze that harbored evil intentions. Why did Bufong have that gaze? What did it want to do to the chicken? Cluck, cluck, cluck. 80's eyes widened, and after swallowing the dragon blood rice in its mouth, it looked at Bufong with vigilance as its little chicken claw retreated. Don't be afraid. Is the dragon blood rice delicious? If it's delicious, I will give it to you tomorrow. The corners of Bufong's mouth twitched, revealing a smile that he thought was friendly. Something wasn't right. 80's chicken comb shook slightly, and it slowly raised its chicken wing. That, 80 be good. Lend me a chicken drumstick, Bufong said seriously, and the twisted expression on his face caused 80's feathers to stand on end. Lend me a chicken drumstick? As expected, you're a human with bad intentions. How could he lend a chicken drumstick? That was the reason why it was running. If it lost its chicken drumstick, wouldn't it be at the mercy of a human? At that time, it would have to borrow a chicken wing and a chicken butt. Cluck, cluck, cluck. He definitely wouldn't allow it. 80's eyes widened, and it spread its chicken claws and started to run. With a shake of its wings, feathers fluttered. Run, 80. Under Bufong's dumbfounded gaze, 80 twisted its chicken butt and sprinted forward. It leaped high into the air and took large strides towards the Nether King's head, who was still sucking on the chili strip with his eyes closed. Wasn't it just borrowing a chicken drumstick? Was there a need to do this? The corners of Bufong's mouth twitched. He shook his head, and he gave up on borrowing a chicken drumstick from 80. He turned around and returned to the kitchen. A chicken feather fluttered down, and it landed on Hades's nose. Hades couldn't help but open his eyes. Where did this chicken feather come from? Hades was stunned for a moment, but he was too lazy to care about it. He continued sucking on the chili strip. Bufong returned to the kitchen, and after thinking for a moment, he found a chicken foot that wasn't of a high grade. Although it couldn't be compared to the 8 treasures chicken's chicken foot, it was at least worthy of the heavenly grade Buddha jumps over the wall soup. The golden dragon bone kitchen knife in his hand spun, and after twirling it, Bufong took the true dragon fruit, and with a slash of the knife, he cut open the skin of the true dragon fruit. In the next instant, the knife moved, and it was so fast that it almost made people dizzy. The skin of the true dragon fruit was cut off by Bufong. With a horizontal cut, the true dragon fruit was cut into 2 halves, and a golden juice flowed out from the center of the true dragon fruit. Bufong used a blue and white porcelain bowl that he had prepared to scoop up the juice. The black turtle constellation wok was already filled with the spirit beast meat. The black flood dragon meat was spread on the bottom of the wok by Bufong. The black flood dragon's skin was peeled off by him, and he used the kitchen knife to cut it open so that the flavor of the flood dragon meat could be fully absorbed. After that, he poured the juice of the true dragon fruit into the wok, and he spread the true dragon fruit's flesh on top of it. He also placed the chicken feet inside. In addition, he prepared a type of deep-sea spirit abalone in the middle of the wok, and he spread all kinds of ingredients on top of it. After everything was prepared, he took out a golden Buddha jar lid. The face of the Buddha on the jar was full of smiles, and it had a round belly. It looked incomparably amiable. After pouring spirit spring water into the jar, Bufong covered the jar with a lid. After pouring water into the wok, a golden heaven and earth obsidian flame spouted out, and he started to cook the Buddha jumps over the wall soup. After finishing everything, Bufong didn't immediately use his mental energy to guide the spirit energy in the wok. Instead, he placed the sour plum soup, which had already cooled down, into a cabinet that had a freezing effect. He let the fridge cool the sour plum soup. After he finished cooking the heaven-grade Buddha jumps over the wall soup, he would be able to enjoy a bowl of sour plum soup. After finishing everything, he returned to the stove and took a deep breath. The Shura tower in front of his chest seemed to have sensed Bufong's powerful mental energy, and it floated up slightly. Bufong's waterfall-like mental energy immediately poured out. Bufong's gaze became solemn, and his face became incomparably solemn. The process of cooking the heaven-grade Buddha jumps over the wall soup was the most difficult. The difference in the grade of the ingredients would result in the difference in the usage of mental energy. Within the store, Hades finally stuffed the last chili strip into his mouth. He stuck out his tongue and licked his lips. Hades' eyes were filled with reluctance. He finished it just like that. He still hadn't sucked enough. After sucking on his finger, which was stained with the sweet and spicy taste of the chili strip, Hades helplessly sighed. Although that youngster is a little stingy, the taste of the chili strip is really good. Hades sighed. At this moment, he felt a headache. How should he exchange the chili strip with that stingy youngster tomorrow? Should he continue using the black spirit plum juice? He didn't know if that stingy youngster would accept it. All of a sudden, Hades' nose twitched, and his eyes lit up. He turned his head to look in the direction of the kitchen and strode towards it. It smells so good. What is this smell? Why is it so fragrant? It's as if a small hand is caressing my heart. Hades exclaimed in admiration. It was the first time he smelled such a fragrance. However, just as he was about to step into the kitchen, a voice suddenly rang out. However, a huge figure blocked his way. Xiaobai's purple eyes twinkled. He raised his fan-like hand and said, "The kitchen is an important place. Unauthorized people are not allowed to enter." Hades was taken aback. He was not allowed to enter a small kitchen? Naughty. It's just a kitchen. I just want to see what you're cooking inside. Hades stretched out a finger and tapped on Xiaobai's plump belly as he said with a smile. Xiaobai's purple eyes twinkled, but he didn't move. Hades curled his lips and took a step back. He mumbled to himself as if he wanted to leave the kitchen. However, in the next moment, the corners of Hades' mouth curled up, revealing a trace of light. His figure suddenly flashed. It was as if the ground had shrunk to an inch as he teleported toward the kitchen. Xiaobai was in a daze. He really couldn't stop him. Hades was very proud of himself. However, in the next moment, he felt his heart palpitate. His heart tightened, and his hair stood on end. Sizzle, sizzle. Bolts of lightning struck down. Hades, who was about to step into the kitchen, suddenly froze. Chapter 594. The appearance of this lightning bolt was extremely sudden, completely out of the Nether King's expectations. That lightning bolt, with a hint of purple radiance, smashed down, causing a thunderous roar. The entire air seemed to have been smashed down, and its might was boundless. Hades didn't expect that a small restaurant could have such a level of lightning bolt. The instant the alarm rose in his heart, his body reacted. A pitch-black energy surged out in an attempt to block the lightning bolt. Lord Go, who was sleeping soundly under the Path Understanding tree, suddenly opened his eyes, looking at the entrance of the kitchen. His eyes were solemn and playful. He was solemn because of that lightning bolt. That lightning bolt made his heart palpitate. As for playfulness, of course, it was because of Hades, that old man courting death. Even he was curious about that kid Bufong's kitchen. However, he didn't have the mood to explore it. That was because that kitchen always gave him a terrible feeling of danger. That kind of danger, even those old fellows in the netherworld couldn't give him that kind of feeling. Hades, that old man, dared to explore that kitchen the first time he came here. If he wasn't courting death, what was? You just need to eat. Why did you have to go to someone else's kitchen to spy? Did you have nothing better to do? Boom, boom, boom. Hades' entire body shot out lightning bolts. Even with his powerful body, he couldn't resist it. With a loud boom, he was blown away, landing on the ground. Every strand of his hair was standing on end, emitting green smoke. The whites of his eyes were rolled back, and his mouth was gaping as green smoke filled the air. He was in an extremely sorry state, like a chicken without feathers that had been roasted. Hades coughed a few times, then took in a breath of cold air. He turned around and sat up. Looking at his torn skin, he couldn't help but swallow a mouthful of saliva. That lightning bolt was so terrifying. It could be compared to the lightning bolt when he was crossing the tribulation. If it weren't Hades who had barged in, but someone else, that person would have been blasted into ashes by that lightning bolt. As Hades, his cultivation base was formidable, and his body was invincible. He could look down on the entire Hidden Dragon continent. But he actually suffered a setback in this tiny restaurant. It was simply awkward. The cracked skin on Hades' body was slowly mending. Soon, he was back to normal. He looked in the direction of the kitchen again with lingering fear. Was that an array? There was actually a formation set up at the entrance of the kitchen. A formation of this level. Who was that young man? Hades' heart was filled with curiosity. He originally thought that the young man was just an ordinary little chef in the Hidden Dragon continent. However, as soon as the array appeared, Hades knew that this little chef was not simple. No wonder this mangy dog would stay in this restaurant. There was indeed something fishy going on. When he thought of that mangy dog, Hades was instantly stunned. He turned his head to look and immediately noticed that the mangy dog's face was covered in a sneer. Hades' face instantly turned red. Damn it, I've been laughed at by this mangy dog. Feeling extremely embarrassed, he pressed his curled hair and wiped the blackness on his face. Then, Hades cracked his mouth, smiling at Blackie, revealing his white teeth. His white teeth were set off by Hades' swarthy face, which looked so white that they shone. Retard. Lorgo looked at Hades' funny appearance. He rolled his eyes, yawned, and mumbled something. Then, he continued to lie down and sleep. Lorgo didn't know what kind of existence was behind Bufong, but he knew that existence was definitely not simple. Moreover, whether that existence was awesome or not, what did it have to do with him? He was only responsible for eating the sweet and sour ribs. The aroma wafting out of the kitchen became thicker and thicker, bringing with it a special rhythm. It was as if there was a Zen chant drifting in the air. Buzz on the second floor. 80 swayed its chicken, but quietly running down. Lorgo opened his eyes, which shone brightly. This brat, Bufong, did he come up with a new dish again? This aroma seems pretty good, Lorgo muttered in his heart. The netherworld ship swayed, and a pair of fair and slender legs stepped out of the ship. You open her eyes wide, sitting on the netherworld ship and swinging her legs. She looked in the direction of the kitchen. Without a doubt, this aroma that suddenly pervaded the air caused them to be unable to sleep. In the kitchen, beads of sweat covered Bufong's forehead. This was the first time he had such a difficult time cooking. The Shura Tower floated up, emitting a brilliant light. It was obvious that Bufong had pushed it to the limit. His mental energy caused the surroundings to become sticky, and even the airflow became slower. Beads of sweat rolled down from Bufong's forehead, slowly falling to the ground. Within the Black Turtle constellation walk, the heaven and earth obsidian flame burned fiercely. The flames soared into the sky, and hot steam filled the air. The Heaven Alps Spirit spring water within the walk was boiling, causing steam to surge up. It was as if a mushroom cloud had erupted, rushing up to the ceiling. Amidst the hazy steam, a smiling Buddha sat cross-legged. His face seemed to be emitting a golden light, and his face was filled with kindness. Bufong took a deep breath, and his gaze became sluggish once again. He continued to use his mental energy to control the flow of spiritual energy within the Buddha jumps over the wall soup. His cultivation was still weak, and it was extremely difficult for him to cook this heaven-grade Buddha jumps over the wall soup. His mental energy was almost completely sucked dry. Bufang's complexion was a little pale. Suddenly, he freed one of his hands, and with a flick of his wrist, a scarlet chili strip appeared in his hand. He stuffed the chili strip into his mouth and began to chew it in big bites. Beads of sweat dripped down from the tip of his nose, but his complexion gradually became better. Just like that, Bufang immersed himself in the arduous process of cooking the Buddha jumps over the wall soup. Outside the kitchen, the sound of Buddha's voice permeated the air, and Hades's expression became more and more solemn. What kind of dish was that youngster cooking? Why was there such a huge commotion? He was also slightly stunned, and she looked toward the kitchen. Lord Go didn't seem to care. He yawned and laid on the ground. However, he didn't sleep, and it was obvious that he was waiting for Bufang to cook. It seemed like he didn't sleep that night. In the pitch-black night sky, a ray of white light slowly appeared. The radiance of the stars gradually dimmed. A resplendent radiance shot out from the end of the sky, and it was like a ray of sword light. It cut the pitch-black night into pieces, tearing apart the heavy curtain of night. Inside the cloud mist restaurant, that his surging energy finally calmed down. Hades, who had been staring for the whole night, finally rolled his eyes. He was a little tired. It's finally over. What kind of dish is it? I'm really looking forward to it. Youngsters these days, even when cooking, they are so naughty. In the kitchen, Bufang's hands drooped down, and he took 2 steps back. He leaned against the wall, gasping for breath. Looking at the ordinary Buddha jumps over the wall soup in the black turtle constellation walk, the corners of his mouth finally rose. The face of the Buddha on the lid was glowing red, and it was vivid and lifelike. It seemed like it was about to come to life, and the smile on its face seemed to be trembling. From time to time, a faint radiance revolved around the Buddha, making it look even more lifelike. Bufang wiped the beads of sweat off his forehead, and he gently exhaled. He straightened his body, which was slightly swaying. The true energy in his body seemed to have been sucked dry, and he was incomparably tired. He walked toward the freezer and opened its door. Inside, there was a big blue and white porcelain bowl filled with sour plum juice. He took out a transparent crystal cup. Bufang scooped up a cup of sour plum juice. After being chilled, the sour plum juice was incomparably cold, and the crystal cup was filled with water droplets because of the coldness. Looking at the sour plum juice, Bufang's throat moved, and he felt a little thirsty. He faced the crystal cup and gulped a mouthful. Gulp! That sweet and sour plum juice, which was incomparably cold, entered his mouth, and it made all the pores on Bufang's body tighten. A refreshing feeling instantly exploded within Bufang's body. The chilled sour plum juice flowed through his mouth and into his stomach, and he couldn't help but close his eyes in enjoyment. That kind of feeling was really indescribable. His heart was chilled, and his heart was soaring. Refreshing. After drinking a mouthful, Bufang exhaled a slightly cold breath, and the corners of his mouth slightly curled up. He felt incomparably refreshed. After letting the Buddha jumps over the wall soup simmer in the black turtle constellation walk for a while, Bufang carried the sour plum juice out of the kitchen. As soon as he walked out of the kitchen, the gazes of the people in the restaurant instantly landed on him. Bufang blinked his eyes and drank a mouthful of sour plum juice. He raised his eyebrows, and it seemed as though he didn't understand the gazes of these people. Bufang's gaze landed on Hades, and when he saw Hades's afro, he was instantly taken aback. When did this fellow change his hairstyle? However, Bufang didn't care about it. He raised the crystal cup in his hand and calmly said, "Come, have a drink made with your black spirit plum juice." A drink made with black spirit plum juice? Hades was taken aback. He saw the red-colored juice in Bufang's hand. This thing was made with black spirit plum juice. Bufang placed the black spirit plum juice on the table, scooped a cup, and passed it to Hades. "What the? It's so cold." Hades held the crystal cup in his hand, and he jumped in fright. In the distance, you had stealthily sneaked over. Her long eyelashes trembled as she stared at the sour plum juice in the porcelain bowl. "What is this?" you asked. Bufong looked at this woman's expression and knew what she wanted. Thus, Bufong didn't reply, and he directly scooped a cup of juice and passed it to her. You took the sour plum juice, and her eyes slightly lit up. That ice-cold feeling made her feel weird. She took a small sip. Her eyes were incomparably bright, and it was as though there was a ray of light shooting out from them. "Delicious." You pouted her lips and said happily. After saying that, she took another small sip. Her eyes narrowed, and her face was filled with enjoyment. Hades glanced at the sour plum juice, and he opened his nostrils to take a sniff. In the end, he drank a mouthful. The moment the sour and sweet ice-cold feeling entered his mouth, his pores instantly shrank, and his afro trembled. "This is black spirit plum juice." Hades's face was filled with astonishment. He gulped down the sour plum juice in his mouth and looked at Bufong with a strange expression. How could such a delicious thing be his sour and bitter black spirit plum juice? Was this youngster bluffing him? "This is the genuine sour plum juice." "Oh, it's made with the black spirit plum juice that you provided. Don't you want to eat chili strips? If you provide me with black spirit plum juice every day, I will give you 3 chili strips for free." Bufong expressionlessly looked at Hades and said. When Hades heard that, his whole body trembled, and his heart instantly bloomed with joy. "Ha! Youngster, you finally stopped being naughty. Deal." Hades drank the sour plum juice in one gulp and patted his chest as he guaranteed. The corners of Bufong's mouth also twitched. Suddenly, his expression changed, and he turned around and walked toward the kitchen. "Wait a moment. The real good stuff is about to come out." The heaven-grade Buddha jumps over the wall soup was finally completed. Chapter 595. The fragrance wafting through the kitchen stirred up Hades and Yu's taste buds. Even Blackie, who was lying on the floor, stood up. The fat on its body slightly trembled as it gracefully strode over to the dining table. Its doggy eyes emitted a bright light as it stared in the direction of the kitchen. This kind of imposing dish was definitely not an ordinary dish. The spirit energy contained within the fragrance and the fragrance of the ingredients were extremely wonderful. It was like a meticulously drawn painting. You found a seat and sat down. She held the ice-cold sour plum juice with both hands and squinted her eyes as she happily sipped it. She loved this sour plum juice so much that she couldn't bear to part with it. In an instant, her heart was captured. "Hades, and you were different." That fellow had an afro on his head as he gulped down the sour plum juice. After drinking it, he deeply sighed. Bufong turned around and returned to the kitchen. The restaurant instantly became quiet. Everyone was looking forward to the dish that Bufong was going to take out next. Shortly after, a figure slowly walked out from the shadows of the kitchen. He held a huge jar in his hand, and on the lid of the jar, there was an amiable Buddha. That Buddha seemed to have come to life, and its body emitted a radiance. Just by looking at it, everyone felt as though there was a Buddhism in their ears, causing them to be in a trance. An oppressive fragrance wafted out from the crack of the lid. It wasn't very strong, but it was extremely rich and intoxicating. A thud resounded. The Buddha jumps over the wall soup, which was still emitting steam, was placed on the table by Bufong. Hades and the others curiously looked at the Buddha jumps over the wall soup. They were slightly astonished. Could such a big jar contain such a good thing? You looked at the Buddha jumps over the wall soup, feeling somewhat puzzled. She realized that Bufong had already cooked this dish. She took a sip of the sour plum juice. Yu's eyelashes slightly trembled. She raised her head and looked at Bufong. "Isn't this the Buddha jumps over the wall soup?" "Yes, it's Buddha jumps over the wall soup, but it's not an ordinary Buddha jumps over the wall soup," Bufong said seriously. "The Buddha jumps over the wall soup is divided into 2 grades, mortal grade and heavenly grade. The previous Buddha jumps over the wall soup were all mortal grade Buddha jumps over the wall soup. Although the ingredients used were not bad, they weren't considered very high grade. The current heavenly grade Buddha jumps over the wall soup is the highest grade ingredient used so far, Bu Fong said solemnly. With so many high-grade ingredients mixed together, the spiritual energy inside was very chaotic, and the cooking process was very difficult. He spent an entire night to finish cooking the dish. True Qi cooking was one of the cooking methods that Bu Fong was best at. He used his mental strength and true Qi to control the flow of true Qi in the dishes, as well as the taste and aroma of the ingredients. This would consume a lot of mental power, true Qi, and physical strength of the chef. After cooking the Buddha jumps over the wall soup, Bu Fong's body was completely drained of true energy. If he hadn't eaten a chili strip, he wouldn't have been able to recover. Bu Fong might not even have the strength to stand at this moment. After cooking, he drank a cup of sour and refreshing sour plum soup to recover his energy. It was undeniable that the heavenly grade Buddha jumps over the wall soup had consumed a lot of Bu Fong's energy. Bu Fong also attached great importance to this dish. Open the lid. Will I taste it for you? Hades said as he licked his lips. Bu Fong glanced at him and didn't say anything. The energy whirlpool in his dantian revolved, and a wisp of true energy gushed out and covered his hand. He used his palm, which was covered with true energy, to open the lid of the jar. The amiable Buddha was vivid and lifelike, and it seemed as though it was about to come to life. The instant the lid was opened, underneath the Buddha, a seven-colored mist rose up, and it seemed as though it had transformed into auspicious clouds that supported the Buddha. When the seven-colored mist dissipated, a golden beam of light shot up from the lid of the jar, dispersing the mist. It was dazzling. An abundant wave of spirit energy spread out, causing everyone's heart to tremble. The fragrance was so dense that it seemed as though it was about to turn into an ocean. Hades, who was the closest to it, was instantly enveloped by the warm fragrance. He couldn't help but narrow his eyes as he was intoxicated by the fragrance. As the fragrance surged, you stopped sipping the sour plum soup and deeply inhaled the fragrance of the Buddha jumps over the wall soup. Lord Go stuck out his tongue, smelling the fragrance with satisfaction. In a corner far away, Hades' chicken was constantly swaying, and its wings were slightly spread out. As the fragrance surged, it seemed as though it was about to ascend to the heavens. At the same time, the fragrance spread out from the store, diffusing out of the restaurant. The sky was already very bright. The owners of the elixir stores were preparing to start work, and the elixir stores around the restaurant were opening for business. However, as the fragrance spread out, those people's shouts suddenly stopped. The diners all looked in the direction of the restaurant in astonishment. This smell is so fragrant. Is Ownerbu cooking a new dish? There's a fragrance. Is Ownerbu back? That's great. I can finally taste Ownerbu's cooking again. The diners were incomparably excited, and they all moved toward the direction of the restaurant. They were truly happy from the bottom of their hearts. The restaurant had been closed for several days. Ever since the day they sold the 3 spicy strips, the store hadn't opened for business, and there hadn't been any activity. Now that there was finally some activity, the diners were naturally excited. Ownerbu was the champion of this year's Magical Hand Conference. His dishes had crushed many other alchemists, and he had long become an influential figure in Heavenly Mist City. Everyone wanted to see the elegance of Ownerbu. The light gradually dimmed. The fragrance was still spreading out. Hades opened his intoxicated eyes, and he impatiently looked at Bu Fong. Young man, quickly give I a bowl. Smelling the fragrance, Hades' saliva flowed out of his mouth. How could it be so fragrant? He had never smelled something so fragrant before. In the netherworld, he had never tasted such a fragrant dish. Lord Go, and you also looked at Bu Fong with a serious expression. The corners of Bu Fong's mouth rose slightly. Everyone's reaction wasn't beyond his expectations. The heaven-grade Buddha jumps over the wall. Soup's charm was unstoppable. With so many high-grade ingredients, the effect of the dish was naturally extraordinary. Taking out a blue and white porcelain bowl, Bufong prepared to ladle out the broth. The broth of the heaven-grade Buddha jumps over the wall soup was somewhat viscous, and it was brown in color. It emitted a unique fragrance. Within that fragrance, there were many strange fragrances, and it was extraordinary. After hundreds and thousands of twists and turns, the fragrance rose in spirals. Swish! The restaurant was silent, and only the sound of people swallowing their saliva could be heard. Bufong picked up a piece of black flood dragon meat and placed it into the blue and white porcelain bowl. He then passed the bowl to Hades, who was the closest to him. Hades received the bowl, and his mood was extremely excited. Ignoring Hades, Bufong continued to ladle out the broth. "This portion is for you." In the end, he also ladled a portion for Blackie. After everyone was done, Bufong also ladled a portion for himself. Bufong had worked so hard to cook the heaven-grade Buddha jumps over the wall soup, so how could he not try it? Hades stared at Bufong from afar. Seeing that Bufong had ignored it, it immediately took small steps and ran to Bufong's side, clucking. Bufong glanced at this chicken, and his mouth twitched coldly. He was too lazy to care about this chicken. Cluck, cluck, cluck. Hades flapped its wings, and chicken feathers flew everywhere. "What are you clucking about? You're a chicken, and you want to eat meat?" Hades drank a mouthful of the heartwarming Buddha jumps over the wall soup. His face was flushed, and he said to Hades in a drunken manner. Hades flapped its wings, and its small eyes glared at Hades. Bufong didn't care about Hades. This stingy chicken didn't even give him a drumstick, and it still wanted to eat meat. Bufong was still considering if he should reduce the amount of dragon blood rice it ate. At this moment, Hades still didn't know that it was about to face something inhumane. It was still clucking at Bufong. Bufong used his chopsticks to pick up a piece of black flood dragon meat. The tender black flood dragon meat was full of fragrance, and it was a little like squid meat. However, it was more fragrant and more creamy than squid meat. Bufong took a bite, and the bouncy meat bloomed in his mouth. The overflowing essence energy burst forth, and dense spirit energy surged. Bufong's eyes slightly twitched. That black flood dragon meat was incomparably soft and bouncy in his mouth. It bounced against the walls of his mouth, and he couldn't help but swallow it. With a gulp, it entered his mouth. Bufong exhaled a breath of hot air, then took another bite. Drinking a mouthful of thick soup, the slightly thick soup carried the fragrance of various ingredients, spreading in his mouth. All kinds of fragrances mixed together, orderly, bringing a special taste. Together with the black flood dragon meat, it brought out the best in each other, and it was extremely enjoyable. Lord Go stuck out his tongue, licking the soup in the bowl. While licking, he squinted his eyes, looking very happy. With a roll of his tongue, a piece of white and tender black flood dragon meat was swallowed into his mouth. Munch, munch, munch. With meat to eat, Lord Go was happy. Lord Go snorted through his nose. The Nether King dripped the last drop of soup into his mouth. Smacking his lips, he savored that unforgettable fragrance, and his face became even redder. "Young man, give I another bowl." Hades looked at Bufong and said with a gentle face. 3 people and a dog, just like that, munched noisily, eating happily. Everyone was exhaling essence, energy, and their faces were red. After eating a piece of meat, they exhaled hot air, which was accompanied by essence energy. Outside the restaurant, there was a long line of customers. The fragrance that was constantly wafting out from the restaurant made everyone gulp down their saliva. After Nangong Wuk got the news that Bufong had returned to heavenly Mist City, he rushed over in a hurry. Not only him, but Sorceress and Sheng and the others also couldn't wait. They had long been captivated by Bufong's delicacies. While everyone was looking forward to it, the bronze gate of the restaurant rumbled, and finally, it slowly opened. An even thicker fragrance floated out, and everyone couldn't help but take a deep breath. Outside heavenly Mist City, under the morning sun, a figure wearing plain clothes stood, looking at the huge heavenly Mist City. Looking at the towering buildings in the city, a smile appeared on his face. He raised his hand, and instantly a jade talisman floated in front of him. True energy surged into the jade talisman, and the jade talisman bloomed like fireworks, turning into a ferocious beast with its mouth wide open, as if it wanted to swallow the heaven and earth. The image of the ferocious beast quickly disappeared, and after a while, it turned into a blurry figure. Senior, I am Rincho, a traveler of the continent. I accidentally found news about the netherworld, and I am here to report, when Rincho said seriously. The blurry figure was silent for a while, then said, News about the netherworld? Yes. When Rincho was very sure. I never thought that there would be news about the netherworld. Good. I will immediately send someone to confirm it. Where are you now? The blurry figure said. When Rincho's eyes lit up. I am outside the Pill Palace's heavenly mist city. I am about to enter the city, and the clue is in the city. However, after the blurry figure knew when Rincho's location, he replied with a strange tone, In the Pill Palace? Sure as sovereign, that lunatic has already returned from the Hidden Dragon Royal Court. That lunatic is clamoring to flatten the Pill Palace. You have to be careful. When Rincho was stunned, and in the next moment, he couldn't help but take a deep breath. Flatten the Pill Palace? The Shura sovereign was really a lunatic. He actually declared that he wanted to flatten the holy land of alchemists. Did the ancient Shura city want to start a war with the Pill Palace? Chapter 596. The sun was high up in the sky. Outside the Cloud Mist restaurant, there was a long line of people waiting. Everyone was filled with anticipation as they looked at the restaurant, hoping that the tightly shut bronze door would open. Many of them were already drooling, and they couldn't wait to taste Onorbu's dishes. The fragrance that permeated the air seemed to poison them, and they couldn't resist it at all. Nangong Wuk's nostrils flared, and he leaned against the bronze door. He wanted to look through the crack of the door, but he couldn't see what was inside. Creak! A deep sound rang out. In the next instant, the bronze door slowly opened. Nangong Wuk's face, which was almost stuck to the crack of the door, trembled. He took a step back, and his eyes lit up. Bu Fong opened the door, and he looked at Nangong Wuk, who was staring at him with a bright gaze. Long time no see. Bu Fong nodded his head, and he greeted Nangong Wuk. Nangong Wuk smacked his lips, and his eyes were filled with tears as he moved to Bu Fong's side. Old Bu, you're finally back. I'm dying of craving. Nangong Wuk said with an incomparable sadness. In the few days that Bu Fong went to the Heaven's Secret Territory, other than eating a chili strip, he didn't have the chance to eat anything else. In his mind, the fragrance and deliciousness of Bu Fong's dishes appeared, and his whole body trembled. Didn't I ask you to sell the chili strip? Didn't you manage to buy it? Nangong Wuk seemed to be a little too excited, and Bu Fong instantly felt a little suspicious. That's right. Big Sister Nethery did sell the chili strip, but cough, cough, cough. Just as Nangong Wuk was about to say something, his sharp eyes suddenly caught a glimpse of Nethery, who was striding forward with her long, sparkling legs. Her eyes, which were as black as ink, pierced through his heart, bringing with it an ice-cold intent. Nangong Wuk's scalp instantly went numb. Big Sister Nethery, you're going too far. Tears streamed down Nangong Wuk's face. Under the threat of Yu's ice-cold gaze, he didn't dare to say anything. Bu Fong was still a little suspicious, but if Nangong Wuk didn't say anything, he wouldn't be too sure. However, he was sure that there was something fishy that he didn't know about. However, he was too lazy to find out. After asking everyone to line up and enter the restaurant, he turned around and entered the kitchen. What dishes do you want to eat? I'll order from you. Bu Fong's voice drifted out from the kitchen. The customers were already clear about the process of Bu Fong's restaurant, so they weren't too surprised. Everyone ordered their dishes in an orderly manner. The Nether King let out a satisfied burp. His face was full of essence energy, and his burp was filled with a pleasant fragrance. He narrowed his eyes and wandered around the restaurant with his afro. After the Lord Go had eaten and drunk his fill, he lay under the path understanding tree and continued to sleep. He squinted his eyes and did not move at all. When Hades saw this scene, he finally understood how this mangy dog became so fat. After eating, he slept, and after sleeping, he ate. Did this mangy dog want to become a pig? Hades glanced at the Lord go, straightened his back, and swung his arms in the restaurant. It seemed like he was exercising after cooking. Many people in the restaurant saw him. When they saw this clown with an afro, they were somewhat puzzled. Did owner Boo's restaurant have a newcomer? Was this afro a waiter? However, this waiter seemed a little silly. Ha! Old Boo, is this the new waiter you hired? Why does he look like a broom? Every strand of his hair is standing up. Nangon Wuk found a seat and sat down. He happened to see Hades, who had eaten and drunk his fill, swinging his arms and legs. Nangon Wuk immediately laughed. That was because Hades' movements were really comical. The surrounding people couldn't help but laugh. Hades was dumbfounded. What the hell? Why were these people laughing? Especially that red-haired fellow, who was the one who looked like a broom. Your whole family looked like a broom. He was Hades, the lord of the netherworld, Hades. He was an extremely awesome existence. The Nether King's face darkened. He squinted his eyes and sat beside Nangon Wuk. He looked at Nangon Wuk from the corner of his eyes, as though he wanted to use his gaze to let Nangon Wuk know his might as the Nether King. Brother, your hairstyle is really stylish. Keep it up. Nangon Wuk swung his fiery red hair, hooking his arm around Hades' shoulder as he spoke, as if he was close with him. Hades was bewildered. Nangon Wuk continued, Brother, you are new here, so you don't know the rules of owner Boo's restaurant. What dishes are delicious and affordable? What dishes have the strongest fragrance? What dishes have the best texture? What dishes can be combined to make you soar to the heavens? Nangon Wuk's words were filled with confidence and experience. Hades didn't understand, but he still felt that it was awesome. Bufong's dishes were delicious, and Hades had already experienced it. That chili strip was something he couldn't stop eating. Yu's face was ice cold as she looked at the two of them, who had evil smiles on their faces. The corners of her mouth curled upwards. As though he felt Yu's gaze, Nangon Wuk quietly raised his head and glanced at her. He softly said, Brother, do you see that big sister? You have to be careful. She is a ruthless character. In the past, this young master fought with her on the Netherworld ship for 300 rounds. Even with my peerless heroic appearance, I was almost suppressed. She is really terrifying. Brother, you have just arrived here, so you have to be careful. This kind of trash could fight with a Netherworld woman on the Netherworld ship for 300 rounds? Hades was extremely shocked. He widened his eyes and looked at Nangon Wuk as though he had discovered a new continent. Nangon Wuk's nostrils flared. He snorted and flung his fiery red hair. I didn't study much. Don't try to deceive I. With your trashy cultivation, the Netherworld woman can crush you with a single finger, Hades said in disbelief. Nangon Wuk's pupils contracted. This brother wasn't easy to deceive. However, in the next moment, Nangon Wuk moved his head forward and started chattering. He scared Hades into a daze. Youngsters nowadays were really incredible. By the way, brother, how should I address you? I am Nangon Wuk, the current leader of Heavenly Mist City's Nangon family, Nangon Wuk said with a smile. Did he ask for his name? Hades curled the corners of his mouth. His eyes were profound as he coldly said, I am Hades Era, the Lord of the Netherworld. Hades Era? What a difficult name. I will call you Little Ha from now on, Nangon Wuk said while rubbing his chin. Hades expressionlessly looked at Nangon Wuk. Little Ha? Little Ha, your sister. He was Hades, the Hades who shook the entire Netherworld. You are called I Little Ha? Are you sure you aren't a clown hired by that mangy dog? A fragrant aroma wafted out of the kitchen. A skinny figure slowly walked out of the kitchen with a steaming hot dish in his hand. Bufong walked toward Nangon Wuk and placed a bowl of Buddha jumps over the wall soup in front of him. Ha! Old Boo's Buddha jumps over the wall soup is really nostalgic. Nangon Wuk smacked his lips, turned his head, and said to the Nether King, Little Ha, the most delicious dish in Old Boo's restaurant is none other than the Buddha jumps over the wall soup. Although the other dishes are also delicious, the texture of the Buddha jumps over the wall soup is still better. Hades' face darkened. He was so angry that his nose almost spurted out white smoke. "I am Hades. If you call me Little Ha again, I will kill you." Hades squinted at him. "Little Ha, don't mess around. Who are we?" Nangon Wuk smiled and opened the lid of the Buddha Jumps over the wall soup. A fragrant aroma wafted out. He smacked his lips and was about to eat it. However, Nangon Wuk seemed to have thought of something. He turned to Bufong and said, "Old Boo, give me another chili strip." The Buddha Jumps over the wall soup with a chili strip is delicious. Bufong raised his brows. A light flashed in his hand, and a chili strip with a spicy aroma appeared. Nangon Wuk received the chili strip and took a bite. Then he gulped down a mouthful of the Buddha Jumps over the wall soup. He chewed for a while and exhaled a breath of hot air. When the hot air blew on Hades' face, the corners of Hades' mouth twitched. Bufong calmly looked at Hades and said, "Little Ha, if you're done eating, please leave. The restaurant is open for business, so please don't disturb us." Little Ha? Who the F*CK is Little Ha? How mischievous. Hades felt as though he was about to vomit blood. Don't disturb us? Youngsters nowadays. They don't recognize me at all. Oh, Little Ha, so you aren't the waiter that Olbo hired? I knew it. With a beauty like Nethery around, why would I need a broomhead like you? Do you not have a place to stay? Don't worry. After I finish eating, I will bring you to the Nangon Mansion. There are many rooms there. Nangon Wuk took another bite of the chili strip and gulped down a mouthful of the Buddha Jumps over the wall soup. As he spoke, he took out a piece of chicken meat from the Buddha Jumps over the wall soup and stuffed it into his mouth. Hades smacked his lips. The Buddha Jumps over the wall soup paired with a chili strip could actually be eaten like this. Youngsters nowadays really knew how to play. However, young man, can you not eat while blowing air at eye? I am afraid that I won't be able to control myself and will squash you to death with a finger. Bufong looked at the loving couple and curled up the corners of his mouth. He was too lazy to say anything else and returned to the kitchen to continue his business. Although he didn't rest for the whole night, Bufong was full of energy after eating the heaven-grade Buddha Jumps over the wall soup. Yu's face was rosy after eating the heaven-grade Buddha Jumps over the wall soup. She was so beautiful that many people couldn't help but look at her in admiration. Little Ha, don't you have crystals to eat Old Boo's dishes? Don't worry. Later on, I will bring you to get rich. As for crystals and whatnot, I will help you earn them in a matter of minutes. Nangon Wuk said as a mouthful of fragrant chili strips and Buddha Jumps over the wall soup sprayed onto the Nether King's face. Hades slowly exhaled. For the sake of the chili strip, I had to endure it. In the heavenly mist city's teleportation array, a radiance flickered, and in the next moment, a figure in plain clothes appeared in the teleportation array. With his hands clasped behind his back, Wenrincho indifferently scanned his surroundings. He had never been to the Pill Palace's heavenly mist city before. This was his first time here. The Pill Palace was very developed. There were rows upon rows of tall buildings, which would cause people to be in a trance. Walking out of the teleportation array, Wenrincho slowly strode forward. His goal in coming to the heavenly mist city was to find Bufong. However, he had heard that the Pill Palace was very popular with alchemists. Bufong, who was just a chef, shouldn't be very famous in the Pill Palace. It would be troublesome to find him. Wenrincho furrowed his brows as he thought about how to find Bufong. The man who called himself Hades and the Netherworld woman were both clues related to the Netherworld. He couldn't lose any clues, so he had to find Bufong. The Shura's sovereign returned from the hidden dragon royal court. That lunatic actually dared to say that he wanted to flatten the Pill Palace. Could it be that he had a breakthrough in his cultivation? Or did he find the help of the hidden dragon royal court's experts? Wenrincho clasped his hands behind his back as he walked slowly. However, all of this had nothing to do with him. He just needed to find that little chef. Thinking about that little chef, Wenrincho's mood turned gloomy. That little chef's culinary skills weren't any weaker than his. If he was discovered by the big shots of the Valley of Gluttony and brought to the Valley of Gluttony, he would become Wenrincho's competitor. Fortunately, That little chef was entangled with the people of the netherworld. That would make things easier. When Rincho smiled, he walked slowly and pulled over a person who was walking hurriedly. He wanted to ask about that little chef. However, when the passerby heard one Rincho's question, his face changed drastically. Chapter 597. The passerby's sudden change in expression gave Rincho a shock. That pair of eyes emitted a bright light, as bright as the stars in the night sky, dazzling and eye-catching. What the hell? What did this reaction mean? Rincho raised his eyebrows and looked at the passerby. Are you here to find Owner Boo? You look like you're not from Heavenly Mist City, right? Are you from another pill city? As expected, Owner Boo is the #1 chef of the Pill Palace. Everyone wants to try his dishes. You're not the first passerby I've met. The passerby squinted his eyes and said with a smile, as if he was very proud. Rincho was speechless. He really did not understand why this passerby was so proud. He just wanted to ask where Bufong was. He originally thought that in the Pill City, Bufong would be a nobody, but he did not expect this guy to be so famous. He randomly picked a person by the roadside, and when he talked about Bufong, his face was full of pride. The #1 chef of the Pill Palace. This title was really domineering. When Rincho squinted his eyes, and the corner of his mouth slightly curled. When he heard the passerby say that Bufong was the #1 chef of the Pill Palace, as the successor of the Valley of Gluttony, he was instantly unhappy. Although he had a cooking competition with Bufong in the inheritance ground of the Supreme Blade Tyrant, the final outcome was not decided. It was true that Bufong was very talented, but as a disciple of the Valley of Gluttony, Rincho was confident that he could defeat Bufong. The Valley of Gluttony was a chef's paradise, and as a disciple of the Valley of Gluttony, wherever he was, no one would dare to call themselves the #1 chef. This was the pride and confidence of the disciples of the Valley of Gluttony. Hence, he felt that this trip was not only to find information about the netherworld, but also to defend the dignity of the chefs of the Valley of Gluttony. The passerby was still chattering nonstop, but when Rincho basically could not hear it anymore. Taking a deep breath, Rincho turned his head and looked into the distance. He interrupted the passerby and said calmly, "You don't have to say too much. Tell me where Bufong is. I want to teach him how to be a chef." The words of the passersby stopped abruptly and turned to look at Rincho in disbelief. "You're actually here to challenge Owner Boo?" The passerby took a deep breath and looked at Rincho like he was an idiot. Owner Boo was the champion of this year's Magical Hand Conference, and he had defeated countless genius alchemists. As a chef, he stood at the peak. Where did this guy get the courage to challenge Elder Boo? Rincho was a little unhappy with the passerby's tone. He frowned and glanced at the passerby. "I told you, I'm not here to challenge him. I'm here to teach him how to cook." The business of the restaurant continued. Some customers came in, and some left. Hades left and was pulled away by the passionate Nangong Wuk. Hades said that he wanted to earn crystals to buy all kinds of chili strips, so he followed Nangong Wuk. Nangong Wuk patted his chest and assured him that he would definitely be able to earn crystals. When the last customer left the restaurant, Bufong slowly walked out of the kitchen. The remaining light of the setting sun was gradually swallowed by the ice-cold night sky. Bufong pulled a chair and sat at the entrance. He curled up on the chair and raised his head to look at the starry sky. The sky was filled with stars, and every single one of them was emitting a dazzling radiance. There were a few stars that streaked across the night sky, as if they were dragging a long tail behind them. After resting for a while, Bufong lazily stood up. He stretched his neck and yawned. After closing the bronze door, Bufong turned around and returned to the second floor, preparing to have a good rest. He first entered the bathroom to take a hot shower. The sparkling water droplets stained Bufong's white skin, and a white mist permeated the bathroom. Bufong shook his hair, and instantly, water droplets splashed everywhere. Wrapped in a bathrobe with his chest open, Bufong rubbed his wet hair and walked out of the bathroom. His body was steaming. He walked to the window and stood in front of it, feeling the cool breeze of the night blowing at him. Gently letting out a breath, Bufong felt unprecedentedly relaxed. After his hair was dried, Bufong climbed onto the bed and covered himself with a blanket. After a while, the sound of steady breathing could be heard. Heaven's secret territory. With a loud explosion, a figure flew across the sky, and blood splattered across the sky. In a large hall, many alchemists were sitting cross-legged, quietly feeling the fluctuations and inheritance in the air, comprehending the true art of alchemy. Suddenly, all of the alchemists opened their eyes and looked in one direction in astonishment. There, a ray of light crossed the void and fiercely landed in the center of the large hall. The light was wrapped with surging energy, and the alchemists in the large hall were all extremely vigilant. When the energy that wrapped the light dissipated, everyone clearly saw the figure within, and they all sucked in a breath of cold air. Fifth Elder, the alchemists all cried out in shock, because they realized that the person who fell on the ground and coughed blood nonstop was not someone else. It was the Pill Palace's fifth elder, an existence in the divine soul realm. The fifth elder was seriously injured? In the heaven's secret territory, who could seriously injure the fifth elder? When everyone thought of this, they were all incomparably terrified. Didn't the fifth elder go to explore the newly appeared inheritance? How could he be seriously injured? Could it be that something happened in the inheritance? Even the fifth elder was injured to this extent. How could the others still be alive? As if someone had thought of something, they looked at each other and chattered nonstop. Everyone's faces were filled with fear. There was actually such a terrifying existence in the heaven's secret territory. The person in charge of the gathering place of alchemists hurried over, took out an intricate medicine box, opened it, and took out an elixir that was emitting a crystalline glow. On that elixir, there were densely packed lines moving, as if it was about to come to life. It was actually a 7-mark spirit elixir. After the fifth elder swallowed the spirit elixir, his complexion became much better. At the same time, the entire heaven's secret territory was in an uproar. A terrifying piece of news swept through the entire heaven's secret territory like a hurricane. In the ancient inheritance, many terrifying beasts that were emitting a thick black aura appeared. These beasts charged out from the waterfall and started a massacre. Countless experts were killed, and even the Pill Palace's fifth elder was seriously injured by the king of the beasts. The opened ruins were like a Pandora's box, for which countless devils rushed out. The various forces in the heaven's secret territory quickly sent this news back to the hidden dragon continent. Many forces received this news that there were beasts killing their way out from the secret territory. Within the heaven's secret territory, many experts had formed an alliance and headed towards the waterfall ruins together in an attempt to seal off the source of evil. The originally quiet and peaceful heaven's secret territory, in a short period of time, became a terrifying battlefield. Blood sprayed everywhere, and killing intent filled the air. Of course, all of this had nothing to do with Bufong. The first ray of sunlight shone through the window, shining on Bufong's face, making Bufong feel a little itchy. Sitting up from the bed, Bufong stretched his waist and yawned. Then, he casually folded the blanket, washed up, put on the vermilion robe, and walked down the stairs. Coming to the kitchen, Bufong familiarly began to practice his knife and carving skills. The knife flashed, and in the kitchen, all kinds of ingredients flew up, all neatly cut. Opening his mouth, he spat out a mouthful of 10,000 bestial flames, and the black turtle constellation wok instantly warmed up. Bufong began to cook the sweet-in, sour ribs and dragon blood rice. A thick aroma filled the restaurant, causing people to involuntarily take a deep breath. After Black Yu and 80 finished their breakfast, they all became lazy. Lord Go lay back under the path-understanding tree and slept soundly. Yu, on the other hand, walked around the restaurant with her long legs. 80, this idealistic chicken, was still shaking its chicken, but running around. Once the door of the restaurant was opened, Nangong Wuk and the Nether King were already waiting outside. Behind them, there was still a long line of people waiting. Hades walked into the restaurant with his head held high, and after exchanging the black spirit plum juice with Bufong for 3 chili strips, he raised his head at a 45-degree angle and extended his hand. There were a few crystals lying quietly in his hand. "Just order whatever you want to eat, and I'll tell you." Bufong rolled his eyes at Hades' action. Why'd he take out crystals to show off? What a clown. Once again, the restaurant began its daily business in an orderly manner. In the distance, a figure wearing cotton clothes slowly walked over. Looking at the long queue, he couldn't help but take in a breath of cold air. This little chef really had some skills, or else he wouldn't be able to attract so many people to line up. However, when Rincho didn't intend to line up, with his hands clasped behind his back, he walked toward the kitchen. This time, he was here to teach Bufong how to be a chef. Naturally, he wouldn't be so friendly, and he wanted to cause trouble the moment he arrived. He walked into the restaurant, and the unique atmosphere in the restaurant slightly surprised him. Wasn't this the man who called himself Hades? He was really here. One Rincho entered the restaurant, and when he turned his head, he saw Hades sitting on a chair with his mouth stuffed. With a chili strip in each hand, he sucked and chewed on it in a weird manner. When Rincho's face darkened, this clown actually called himself Hades. How shameless could he be? You carried a dish, and with her slender legs, she walked out and expressionlessly glanced at Rincho. "Please line up for your meal, or else you will be treated as a troublemaker," you said coldly. The corners of Rincho's mouth curled up, and he revealed a faint smile. "I'm here to cause trouble. I'm here to ask Bufong to teach me how to cook, to teach him how to be a proper person." Rincho swept his gaze across the crowd and said in a domineering manner. At first, he thought that he could feel the crowd's excitement and enthusiasm, but Rincho was soon wrong. He realized that the crowd was looking at him as if he was an idiot. He was still carrying a porcelain plate, serving a dish to a customer. The most frightening thing was that the atmosphere suddenly became quiet when Rincho's face alternated between green and red. As a traveler of the Valley of Gluttony in the continent, he was actually looked down upon by a group of customers in a restaurant. This was simply a humiliation. Xiao Bai's purple eyes flickered, and he walked out of the kitchen, and his gaze landed on Rincho. "Troublemaker, you will be stripped as an example to others," Xiao Bai said, as if he had determined that Rincho was a troublemaker. Rincho was instantly stunned. "Strip? Strip what?" In the kitchen, a figure slowly walked out. Bufong wiped off the water stains on his hands, and coincidentally saw Rincho standing proudly in the restaurant, and he was slightly stunned. "Why are you here? Are you ordering?" Bufong asked suspiciously. When Rincho saw the person in question, he instantly squinted his eyes and revealed a look of interest. The corners of his mouth twitched, and he said, "Of course I'm not here to order. I'm here to learn from you how to cook, and to teach you how to be a proper person." Looking at the domineering Rincho, Bufong blinked his eyes. "Oh, are you here to challenge me? Then line up according to the rules," Bufong said calmly. After that, Bufong went back into the kitchen and continued to cook. Rincho was instantly stunned, and his heart was roaring. He was not here to challenge. He was here to teach you how to be a proper person. Under the curious gaze of the crowd, Rincho suddenly felt a little unnatural. Chapter 598. Heaven's Secret Territory. Smoke rose, and a thick smell of blood permeated the entire secret territory. The mountains collapsed, and the ground cracked. Corpses littered the ground, and blood flowed freely. The experts from the various forces were all in a sorry state. After a big battle, they forced the beast from the relic to retreat. However, they also paid a huge price. Many experts were killed by those beasts, and their blood filled the air. The fifth elder's white robe was stained with dust, and his old face was filled with exhaustion. An expert came forward, and with a serious face, he said to the fifth elder, "Elder, the origin of these beasts has been investigated." "Oh, where did these beasts come from?" The fifth elder held his chest and lightly coughed. That expert's face was incomparably serious, and he said seriously, "The continent contacted us. According to our description of the beasts, they looked through many books, and finally, they received news from the Hidden Dragon Royal Court. These beasts might have come from the Netherworld." Netherworld? The fifth elder's eyes slightly shrank, and his face instantly changed. One Rincho looked at Bufong, turning around to enter the kitchen, and he felt a cold breeze blowing past his head. He was ignored just like that. As the continent walker of the Valley of Gluttony, he was actually ignored just like that. Did this kid really think that after making a few dishes in the Supreme Blade Tyrant Soul Sea space, he could win against him? How could this little chef know the true abilities of the Valley of Gluttony? The surrounding diners looked at him like he was a joke, and it made him feel very uncomfortable. There was a surge of anger in his heart. However, no matter how he called out to Bufong, Bufong just told him to queue up. This made him feel aggrieved, as if he had punched cotton. "You better queue up obediently. Lord Bai is not someone to be trifled with." Nangon Wuk sat on the chair and picked up a piece of chicken from the Buddha Jumps over the wall soup. He happily stuffed it into his mouth and said with a smile. Hades nodded at the side, eating the spicy strip and drinking the Buddha Jumps over the wall soup. He was very satisfied. When Rinchu glanced at Hades fearfully. When Rinchu wasn't afraid of the puppet, but the man who called himself Hades was too strong. When Rinchu couldn't help but fear him. If there was no Hades, when Rinchu would have made his move long ago. The chefs of the Valley of Gluttony didn't just have excellent cooking skills. Each disciple's cultivation base had to keep up with theirs, which was why they had to display their formidable abilities. Only when one's cultivation base was strong would one be able to cook high-grade dishes and obtain high-grade ingredients. Hence, in the Valley of Gluttony, every chef was a powerful existence. One Rincho, had even reached the peak of the divine physique echelon. He was not afraid of a mere puppet, but the unfathomable Hades, he was still very afraid of him. Looking at Hades, whose mouth was dripping with oil, when Rincho took a deep breath, turned around, and walked out of the store to line up. He endured the humiliation and stood in line. In the process, his anger and humiliation kept accumulating. When it was his turn, he would definitely teach Bufong a real lesson, to teach him how to be a proper person. With this anger, when Rincho's eyes became ruthless, the line moved slowly and time passed quietly. When Rincho, who was dressed in plain clothes, stood in the line, looking at the customers in front of him entering and leaving the restaurant with a satisfied face, he gradually furrowed his brows. He had to admit that this was a successful restaurant. A chef who could make the customers smile was a truly good chef. The Valley of Gluttony's motto had always been like this. He didn't expect to see such a principle from a small chef on the continent. The sun gradually began to set in the west. The number of people in front of when Rincho gradually decreased. Finally, it was when Rincho's turn. When Rincho's heart was filled with excitement. He could already imagine Bufong being defeated by him, and the feeling of satisfaction he would feel when he wiped away his humiliation. However, when he stepped into the restaurant, his sharp eyes swept across the surroundings. A figure walked out from the kitchen. Bufong shook off the water stains on his hands. After wiping them clean, he calmly said, "Today's opening hours have ended. Everyone, please come earlier tomorrow." When the customers heard Bufong's words, they all felt extremely regretful and pitiful. However, they were all clear of Bufong's rules, so they didn't complain and directly left. Only when Rincho stood in the restaurant with a dumbfounded face. What was going on? What was the meaning of this? Was this little chef trying to stir up trouble? He queued for half a day, and, in the end, he was told that the opening hours had ended. Where was the trust between people? Owner Bu, at this moment, can I have a cooking competition with you? When Rincho narrowed his eyes and said coldly. Bufong coldly glanced at him. He raised his hand and took off the velvet rope that tied his hair. His jet black hair instantly spread out, making Bufong feel much more relaxed. Challenge me? Come back tomorrow during opening hours, Bufong said. After saying that, He turned around and planned to continue into the kitchen, when Rincho's face was instantly filled with anger. He coldly stared at Bufong's back. "Are you afraid of me? So you have been avoiding me? You don't dare to have a cooking competition with me, because you don't have the confidence, because you think that you can't beat me." When Rincho said, Bufong was stunned. He turned his head in surprise. Everyone in the restaurant was stunned. Moreover, he felt a little creeped out because the Netherworld woman was sitting on the Netherworld ship, swinging her fair and tender legs. A pair of pitch-black, ice-cold eyes were locked onto him. If the Netherworld woman made a move, when Rincho, would really be at a disadvantage. Bufong glanced at him indifferently, then turned around and entered the kitchen. In the distance, Nangong Wuk's eyes lit up. He turned his head to Hades, who was eating a chili strip, and said, "Little Ha, do you know Lord Bai's nickname? People call him the crazy clothes-stripping demon. He loves stripping people's clothes the most, and he's invincible. Many people were killed by Lord Bai, and they all left naked." Hades happily sucked on his chili strip, and his expression was that of watching a good show. Crazy clothes-stripping demon? It sounds very powerful. Then, why don't you strip one for I to see? Lord Go, who was lying under the path-understanding tree, was speechless when he heard the conversation between the two. He adjusted his sleeping position and continued to sleep. In order to see a real clothes stripping, under Nangong Wuk's instigation, Hades quietly made a move with a chili strip in his mouth. A black energy shot out when Rincho was trying his best to resist Xiao Bai's attack. It whipped at Rincho's legs, causing his body to stiffen, and he lost his balance as Xiao Bai's mechanical eyes lit up and its round head glowed with a radiance. It swung its fan-like hand out. In front of Rincho's terrified expression, he pressed his hand on Rincho's body. Rip! It was a wild ripping, tyrannical stripping. A clear and melodious sound rang out. Nangong Wuk widened his eyes. Hades, who was holding a chili strip in his mouth, widened his eyes. They watched as Rincho's body moved in an arc, and the coquettish clothes on his body were torn to shreds, revealing his shining white body. With a bang, he fell outside the store, raising a cloud of dust. Rincho's face turned completely red. He felt a sense of humiliation. As a traveler of the Valley of Gluttony, he had never suffered such a huge loss. A surge of anger surged in his chest. Xiao Bai's mechanical eyes flickered, and its huge body blocked the entrance like a small mountain. Hades and Nangong Wuk stuck their heads out, looking at Rincho's body, and muttered to themselves. Rincho felt as though his chest was about to explode. His eyes turned red. He grabbed the ice-blue kitchen knife and wiped it across his palm. Immediately, beads of blood splattered out and a strange wave spread in the void. I, Rincho, swear with my heart that I will have a chef's challenge with Bufong, betting my dignity and honor. Rincho almost roared out. As soon as he finished speaking, a huge blood-colored shadow of a ferocious giant beast suddenly appeared behind Rincho. It opened its big mouth and bit down, swallowing Rincho. However, after swallowing him, the shadow seemed to have turned into a breeze and dissipated. Buzz, as though it had become some kind of oath, an invisible connection was formed between Rincho and Bufong. In the kitchen, Bufong seemed to feel something, and his whole body froze. In his mind, the system's solemn and serious voice suddenly rang out. The Valley of Gluttony's Chef's Challenge oath has been initiated, and the host cannot reject it. Once the Chef's Challenge oath is initiated, the culinary skills of both parties will compete. The loser will have his knife broken, and he will never cook again. Chapter 599. Bufong was a little surprised that the system would speak to him. Chef's Challenge. What was that? Not allowed to reject? That sounds very powerful. System, what is this Chef's Challenge? Bufong asked the system in his mind as he stopped what he was doing and frowned. He didn't know that Rincho was shouting at the top of his lungs outside the restaurant. When he received the chef's challenge, he was completely stunned. Moreover, the actions that triggered the system's reaction were naturally not ordinary. Chef's challenge is a battle of dignity between chefs. Using dishes as the basis, the contestants bet their dignity and future on the culinary path. The winner has the right to deprive the other party of the right to cook and take away the other party's kitchen knife, causing the other party to completely leave the culinary world. The system said solemnly. However, those words sent a chill down Bu Fong's spine. This chill caused goosebumps to appear on Bu Fong's skin. It was a little scary. Depriving the other party of the right to cook and taking away the other party's kitchen knife. This chef challenge was really vicious. To a chef who loved to cook, depriving the other party of the right to cook was such a cruel thing. Bu Fong didn't expect such a thing to happen to him. When Rincho actually wanted to have a chef's challenge with him, was this guy crazy? System. According to your explanation, shouldn't this chef's challenge be voluntary? Why don't I have the right to reject it? Bu Fong asked in confusion. As a man who wants to become the god of cooking in the fantasy world, the host shouldn't have any fear. He should press forward and not reject any chef's challenge. Don't be a coward, just do it, the system said. Bu Fong was silent for a while, and then he understood. Since he wanted to become the god of cooking, how could he be afraid? If he retreated because he was afraid of losing the right to cook, a flaw would appear in his heart, and it would become a stumbling block on his path to becoming the god of cooking. Neither the system nor Bu Fong would allow such a thing to happen. Bu Fong's eyes narrowed. Outside the restaurant, when Rincho let out a roar, an invisible wave spread out. Nangong Wuk and the others were startled, and they thought that something had happened. However, no matter how they looked, they couldn't find anything. This guy, he actually dares to bluff people. Chef's challenge. It sounds really awesome, Nangong Wuk muttered. Hades furrowed his brows. His hair had returned to normal today, and it was black and shiny. His cultivation was much higher than Nangong Wuk's, so Nangong Wuk was unable to sense it. However, Hades was able to sense the fluctuation in the air. In particular, the shadow that flashed behind when Rincho made him feel a sense of familiarity. He seemed to have encountered that aura somewhere. Hades, who had a spicy strip in his mouth, thought for a while. He really couldn't think of anything, so he was too lazy to think about it. Little Black, who was lying under the path understanding tree, also opened its eyes. When it saw the aura gradually dissipating from a naked one Rincho's body, its eyebrows instantly twitched. It's that thing's aura. In the darkness of the kitchen, a skinny figure slowly appeared, walking out from the darkness. The light gradually dissipated, revealing a familiar face. Everyone was taken aback. Owner Bu, why did he come out? Didn't they say that the restaurant was closed for the day? Bu Fong saw one Rincho, and when Rincho also saw Bu Fong. The corners of one Rincho's mouth twitched slightly, revealing a trace of a sinister arc. You finally came out. I thought you didn't dare to accept my chef's challenge. It seems like you still have some guts. Bu Fong walked to the door, looking at one Rincho expressionlessly. Everyone seemed to feel the stagnant aura in the air. After a long time, Bu Fong then sighed softly. Why bother? Since the chef's challenge has begun, let's not pretend anymore. Tomorrow, I will come on time for the appointment. Bu Fong, you should prepare for the chef's challenge. As the one who proposed the chef's challenge, the theme for tomorrow's chef's challenge will be decided by me, and it will be fish. You're on your own, when Rincho said coldly. After saying that, he covered his lower body and limped out of the cloud mist restaurant. Everyone looked at when Rincho's departing figure, remaining silent for a long time. Bu Fong stood at the entrance of the restaurant, gazing at when Rincho's departing figure. After a long time, the corners of his mouth twitched. Nangong Wuk was at a loss. He felt that he couldn't understand what Bu Fong and when Rincho were talking about. Old Bu, what is this chef's challenge? It sounds very powerful. Nangong Wuk looked at Bu Fong and asked. Bu Fong turned his head, glanced at him, and said calmly, the so-called chef's challenge is similar to a battle of life and death between martial artists. The difference is that the loser doesn't die, but is stripped of his right to cook, never to be a chef again. What? Everyone was shocked. This was a chef's challenge. It was the first time they heard of it. Stripping a chef of his right to cook. This was simply too cruel. Olbu, if you lose, doesn't that mean you won't be able to cook in the future? Doesn't that mean I won't be able to eat that delicious Buddha jumps over the wall soup anymore? Nangong Wuk covered his chest, his face full of fear. Behind him, Hades had a chili strip in his mouth. He also covered his chest, his face full of fear as he said, "That's right. If you lose, I won't be able to eat the delicious chili strip anymore. No way. I will go and kill that bastard right now." Once the chef challenge starts, it means that both parties have signed a contract. Neither party is allowed to hurt the other party, and the violator will be punished, Bufong said. Hades was stunned. He held the chili strip in his mouth, feeling a little helpless. Sigh. Actually, I didn't want it to be like this. Bufong sighed, turned, and walked toward the kitchen. It would be great if everyone could cook happily. Hades and Nangongwuk looked at each other. Then both of them left the restaurant. Tomorrow's chef's challenge. That was a battle that concerned the dignity of chefs. The two of them suddenly felt a little excited. When Rinshou returned to the inn, his face was a little dark. Fortunately, he had prepared a lot of clothes for traveling the continent. He found a secluded place and put on a set of cloth clothes. That was why he did not become the center of attention. Otherwise, a naked walker of the Valley of Gluttony would be extremely embarrassing. Sitting on a chair in the inn, when Rinshou poured himself a cup of tea. The inn he stayed in was one of the best inns in heavenly Mist City. The boiling hot tea fragrance wafted out, causing him to be slightly intoxicated. After drinking the tea, when Rinshou began to think about the dish he would cook for tomorrow's chef's challenge. The topic he chose was fish. This was also the type of cuisine he was most proficient in. Previously, during the inheritance of the Supreme Blade Tyrant, although he was suppressed by Bufong, he was completely unconvinced. That was because he knew that the type of cuisine he was most proficient in was fish. This chef's challenge concerned the future of his culinary skills and his dignity. Naturally, he had to show his true strength. Raising his palm, a wave of cold air spread out, and an ice-cold crystal kitchen knife appeared in his hand. Caressing the ice-cold kitchen knife, when Rinshou's face revealed a trace of intoxication, he touched the knife's body, slowly rubbing it. Hidden Dragon Continent. Central Mountain Range. The continuous mountain range rose and fell, and all kinds of ferocious mountain peaks shot up into the sky, like spirit beasts roaring to the heavens. In the continuous mountain range, there was a valley, and in the valley there was a huge sparkling lake. The lake's water was azure blue. Around the lake, there were circles of towering buildings. In one of the towering buildings, a figure slowly opened his eyes. It was an old man with white hair and a face full of wrinkles. The old man coughed, stood up, and slowly walked to the window, standing in front of it. Creak! A distant sound rang out, and a figure pushed the door open, walking in from outside respectfully. Teacher, junior brother Wenrin's name on the tablet of gluttony is reacting. You should have started a chef's challenge with someone outside, that figure said respectfully. The old man's breathing was very steady, and the wrinkles on his face slightly trembled. His eyes looked far away, looking at the sparkling lake, but he did not say anything. After a long time, he slowly opened his mouth, and his voice was a little hoarse. Simply ridiculous. He actually dared to start a chef's challenge outside the valley. If he loses, he will completely lose the face of the Valley of Gluttony. The old man's voice was a little sullen, and there was a sense of terror that came from not being angry. The air seemed to be stagnant at this moment, causing the respectful figure behind him to slightly tremble. Teacher, in the outside world, how could junior brother Wenrin lose? All the elite chefs of the Hidden Dragon Continent have gathered in the Valley of Gluttony. How could those ordinary chefs in the outside world be a match for junior brother? The figure seemed to be a little relaxed as he said. The old man slowly turned around, and his white hair gently fluttered in the wind. Don't underestimate the people in the world. You can leave now. If that kid, Wenrin Cho, loses, you will personally go out of the valley and bring him back. At the same time, you can also recruit the person who defeated him into the valley. This jade talisman is the 10,000-mile talisman. Take it." The old man raised his hand, and a brown jade talisman floated out, landing in the hand of that figure. The figure's face slightly changed. Did teacher calculate something? Why was he so unconfident in his junior brother? Could it be that there was someone outside the valley who could reach the level of a first-grade chef? How monstrous would that person be? "You can leave now." The old man waved his hand. That figure immediately retreated. With his hand behind his back, the old man turned around to face the big lake, and his eyes slightly drooped. Who did Wenrin Cho meet this time? The tablet of gluttony's soul that was triggered by the chef's challenge oath could not cover the other party. It was rejected by an unfathomable force. What actually happened? The ancient Shura city was located in the west of the hidden dragon continent. That place was desolate and boundless. Yellow sand filled the sky, and there were terrifying insects and beasts rolling and roaring in the yellow sand. Terrifying energy waves spread out. Suddenly, the yellow sand that filled the sky stopped moving. The insects and beasts also instantly burrowed into the yellow sand, not daring to even breathe loudly. In the depths of the yellow sand, many black figures appeared. Countless blood-haired experts wearing armor stood there. The Shura Saintess was also wearing a martial attire. Her expression was solemn, and the armor on her body bound her beautiful figure, making her even more charming. Her perfectly straight and fair legs were exposed, sparkling and translucent. Even if the yellow sand were to blow, it would not affect her fair skin in the slightest. However, the Shura Saintess's expression was not very optimistic. There was even a hint of worry in between her brows. "Your Majesty, are we really going to attack the Pill Palace?" The Shura Saintess asked an ordinary-looking youth beside her. That youth was incomparably handsome. His red hair fluttered in the wind, and he had a pair of purple eyes that were as deep as a bottomless pit. "Those who offend my ancient Shura city will be killed no matter how far they are. Whether it's the Pill Palace or the chef who controls the Shura Tower, they all must die." The handsome youth's lips curled into a cold smile as he said. Chapter 600. Early morning. The sky began to drizzle, and the gloomy weather gradually brought a chill to the air. Bufong opened his eyes and got up from his bed. After washing up, he walked out of his room and went to the kitchen. Although the chef's challenge with Wenrin Cho was about to begin, Bufong didn't seem worried at all. Bufong rubbed his sleepy head and yawned. Green smoke curled up from his hands as he prepared to practice his knife skills and dishes. He cooked the sweet and sour ribs and dragon blood rice for the two foodies in the restaurant before returning to the kitchen. After practicing his knife skills for a while, Bufong stopped and started to think about the dish for the chef's challenge. Fish dish. What dish should I use to challenge Wenrin Cho? Bufong thought. Since it was a chef's challenge, Wenrin Cho definitely wouldn't use a dish that he wasn't familiar with to compete with Bufong. After all, the chef's challenge concerned a chef's dignity and future. The loser would be deprived of his kitchen knife and the right to cook. It was extremely cruel. Lee's fish, spicy boiled fish, fish head tofu soup, grilled fish. Bufong rubbed his chin and thought. Of course, there were many other fish dishes. Up until now, Bufong had cooked many fish dishes and there were many that he could use. After thinking for a long time, Bufong frowned slightly. He suddenly felt that he could try a new dish this time. A famous dish from his previous life appeared in his mind. He squinted his eyes and twitched the corner of his mouth. That was the dish he wanted to make. Because it was a chef's challenge, the system could actually provide ingredients for Bufong for free. This surprised Bufong. Was this stingy system enlightened? When a plump divine realm fish-type spirit beast landed in front of Bufong and flapped its tail, Bufong was amazed. This was because this fish was really plump. The meat was full of spirit energy. Pinching the fish's body, it was filled with elasticity. The fish's scales were like sharp blades, giving off a sharp aura. After caressing it for a while, Bu Fong began to process the fish. The dragon bone kitchen knife appeared in his hand. After twirling the knife in his hand, he fiercely slashed down, drawing a resplendent arc in the air. The knife flashed with dazzling light. It was drizzling. It was a summer rain, but it was rare to see such light rain. However, even though it was raining, the number of people lining up in front of the restaurant didn't decrease at all. Every single one of them stood at the entrance of the restaurant excitedly, waiting for the bronze gate to open as usual. However, unlike in the past, the diners' faces were filled with excitement and worry. That was because they had received news that Ownerbu was going to have a chef's challenge with a very powerful chef. They didn't know what a chef's challenge was, but they felt that it was awesome. However, there were people who understood the stakes of this chef's challenge, and they were worried about Bu Fong. Until now, Bu Fong had never lost, even when facing the top alchemists of the Pill Palace. However, at that time, Bu Fong's opponents were all alchemists. But this time, his opponent was a real chef. Moreover, it sounded like a very powerful chef, and he even knew something like a chef's challenge. Rain fell from the sky, drenching the clothes of many people. Suddenly, a commotion came from the street in the distance. A silhouette slowly approached from afar. Everyone's eyes narrowed, because in their line of sight, that silhouette was carrying a huge fat fish on his back. The body of the fish was filled with boundless spiritual energy, constantly absorbing the rainwater in the surrounding sky. That fish was still alive, and it opened and closed its mouth. Under the reflection of the rainwater, its scales sparkled like stars in the night sky. He's here. That's the chef who is going to have a chef challenge with Ownerbu. What a fat fish. What kind of fish is that? Many people exclaimed in surprise. Their eyes widened as they looked at the fish, and they sucked in a breath of cold air. Hades and Nangong Wuk also widened their eyes as they looked at the fat fish, and they exclaimed in admiration. That is a divine realm spirit beast that has broken through 3 of the Supreme Being's shackles. It's called the Luminous Cod. I heard that it can spit out a domain, and it can freeze the movements of people within it. Nangong Wuk exclaimed in admiration. Hades was surprised, and he looked at Nangong Wuk suspiciously. Are the youngsters nowadays so knowledgeable? However, the flesh of this fish is very soft, and it requires a lot of control over the fire. If you don't control the fire well, the flesh will become loose. Nangong Wuk continued. Hades was even more surprised. How do you know that? Aren't you an alchemist? Nangong Wuk snorted and said, Even though I'm an alchemist, I have the heart of a foodie. Ever since I ate Old Boo's dish, I started researching ingredients. Aren't we going to compete with fish this time? I flipped through all the information I had. Just as the two of them were conversing, the tightly shut bronze gate of the Cloud Mist restaurant slowly opened. A creaking sound rang out. Everyone's gazes shifted over and landed on the bronze gate that was opening. A figure walked out from it. Bu Fong stretched his body, and he looked at everyone with a calm gaze. Good morning, everyone, Bu Fong said calmly. Ownerbu, we support you. You will definitely win the chef's challenge. Ownerbu, you must win. I haven't had enough of your dishes. Ownerbu, why don't you start today's business first? Otherwise, if we lose, we won't be able to taste your dishes. Bu Fong's face darkened. What were these people talking about? What do they mean by starting today's business first? Did they not have any confidence in him? The crowd opened up a path, and when Rincho, who was carrying the luminous cod on his back, slowly walked over. His feet stepped on the wet ground, causing the water to splash everywhere. He raised his head and looked at Bu Fong calmly. Are you ready? Our chef's challenge is about to begin. These calm words were filled with a sharp aura and a terrifying battle intent. When Rincho was very excited, the muscles on his body were slightly trembling. He felt that he was finally going to wipe away his previous humiliation. Bu Fong also walked out of the restaurant, standing on the empty ground in front of the restaurant. The owners of the elixir stores consciously moved their elixir stores away, leaving enough space for the two of them to have a chef's challenge. The air suddenly became stagnant, and the falling rainwater seemed to become bone-chilling. Hades' handsome face revealed a hint of seriousness. He waved his hand, and instantly, a layer of light shrouded the area, isolating the rainwater. However, the raindrops, which were getting heavier and heavier, fell on the light curtain and splashed around, making pitter-patter sounds. Everyone held their breaths, looking carefully at the two people in the arena. Buzz, a metal table appeared. When Rincho threw the luminous cod on the metal table with a back throw. The loud bang made everyone's heart skip a beat. The theme of this chef's challenge is fish. I wonder if Ownerboo is ready? I hope Ownerboo won't let me down. The corner of one Rincho's mouth curled up. An icy blue light appeared in his hand, and the surrounding temperature suddenly dropped. An ice blade appeared in his hand. The ice blade spun and swept across. Swoosh! The flying fish scales shot out like flying daggers. That smooth movement made everyone exclaim in surprise. This chef standard was really not weaker than Ownerboo's. The crowd was suddenly filled with anticipation. Perhaps this would be a very exciting chef's challenge. The kitchen knife cut horizontally and the fish head was cut off. The white and tender fish meat was instantly revealed. When Rincho raised his head and looked at the surprised expressions on everyone's faces, the corner of his mouth instantly curled up, revealing a trace of satisfaction. And in the midst of everyone's exclamations, the kitchen knife shook, and with a ripping sound, it pierced into the belly of the fish. In the next moment, it was pulled out, along with the fish bones. With a turn of the kitchen knife, it drew an arc, and the fish bones flew out like scattered flowers. It was incomparably dazzling. Bufong looked at Rincho's knife skills and was slightly surprised. This knife skill was not bad. Was this the strength of Rincho? The strength of a second-grade chef from the Valley of Gluttony? A black pan with a flat bottom appeared, floating in the sky. It was obvious that this was not an ordinary pan. With a snap of his fingers, a ball of red flames darted out, drilling into the bottom of the pan. In a short while, the pan emitted green smoke. A few spiritual ingredients were thrown up by Rincho. The icy blue knife in his hand flashed, and these spiritual ingredients were instantly cut into pieces. They were scattered into the pan. A wave of medicinal fragrance spread out from the pan, and everyone opened their nostrils and began to take a deep breath. Hades looked on curiously. This was the first time he saw a battle between chefs. This kind of unique competition made him very excited and expectant. When Rincho took advantage of the time, when the spiritual ingredients in the pan emitted the fragrance and began to cut the fish, he did not choose the whole fish, but chose the fattest part of the fish. That circle of fish meat was tender, and it was the most essential part of the fish. Carefully using the ice knife to support himself, when Rincho's fingers shook, and he actually used a unique technique to massage the fish meat rapidly. His technique was dazzling. After the massage, he tossed the fish into the air. His hand flashed, and instantly a wine jar appeared. With a flick of his finger, the wine jar exploded, and crystal clear wine flew out, diffusing into the air. Under Rincho's control, it instantly permeated the whole fish. With a twist of his finger, the ice knife flew up, and he used the back of the knife to hit the body of the fish. This caused the wine to permeate into the fish meat, and the fish meat that was floating in the air became even more crystal clear. True energy surged, and after the wine had permeated into the fish meat, when Rincho activated his own true energy and sucked out the wine from the fish meat. Swish! The fish meat fell into a large pile of starch that was prepared, and the starch was evenly distributed on the fish body. After finishing all this, when Rincho carefully raised his hand and dragged the fish meat and placed it into the pan that was already filled with fragrance. Sizzle, sizzle, sizzle. Once it entered the pan, a sizzle sound could be heard, and the fragrance instantly soared. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. Looking at Rincho's series of actions, they really did not have any confidence in Bufong. That gorgeous operation, that incomparably dazzling knife skill, all of it dazzled their eyes. This time, old Boo is really in danger. Nangong Wuk's eyes widened, and he said. Hades, on the other hand, curled his lips, and said if old Bu used chili strips, he would definitely kill this thing. However, unlike the crowd's worries, Bufong's state of mind was very calm. With a flash of light in his hand, a table was placed in front of him, and a plump fish appeared, landing on the table. Bufong gently exhaled, and he clasped his hands together, and the corners of his mouth curled up. Westlake's sweet and sour fish. Come out. Chapter 601. Slap, slap, slap. The plump fish emerged from Bufong's system-dimensional storage and landed on the table. It continuously slapped its tail, emitting a loud sound. The fish's gills were slightly opened, and its mouth was spitting out water vapor. Dense spirit energy was constantly gushing out from its mouth. This fish was called the dragon carp. It was a type of divine echelon spirit beast. Its meat was excellent, and its texture was amazing. Bufong chose this type of spirit beast after careful consideration. The system had provided many fish species for Bufong, and Bufong had considered all of them. In the end, he still chose the dragon carp. It was not because of the dragon carp's strength, but because the flesh of the dragon carp was very similar to a type of fish in his previous life. After all, he had chosen to cook Westlake's sweet and sour fish, and the best ingredient was carp. Bufong also saw the plump fish that Rincho had chosen. It was a type of codfish. According to Bufong's guess, Rincho was going to cook pan-fried codfish. It was also a type of delicious dish. The crowd looked at Bufong's fish, then looked at Rincho's fish, and they were slightly stunned. Until now, they had not been able to determine what kind of dish they were going to cook. Green smoke curled up from Bufong's hand, and the dragon bone kitchen knife instantly fell into his hand. After twirling the knife around, Bufong let out a light breath, and his gaze fell on the dragon carp. The tip of the knife drew a line above the fish, as though he was looking for a place to cut. After a long time, Bufong finally made his move. With a twirl of the knife, the kitchen knife shot out like lightning, and in an instant, it streaked across the fish's body. Rip, rip, rip. Like the sound of steel rubbing against each other, pieces of fish scales shot out like flying knives. That kind of violent attitude caused everyone to be slightly startled. Bufong's face was calm, and he was not surprised at all. After scraping off the scales on one side, he grabbed the fish's tail and swung it. In an instant, the fish flipped over and the knife slashed down. The sound of steel rubbing against each other resounded again. Fish scales splattered, and in a short while, the entire fish was processed. The gills of the fish were removed, and the guts of the fish were removed. The series of movements flowed smoothly. However, compared to Rincho, Bufong's actions were much more violent. If Rincho's way of handling the fish was like a gentleman's, then Bufong was like a hot-tempered man, not gentle at all. But even if it wasn't gentle, it didn't affect that special sense of beauty. In the distance, the rich aroma of the fish wafted through the air. Everyone couldn't help but raise their noses, deeply inhaling the fragrance in the air. Outside the barrier, rainwater poured down in torrents, smashing into the light barrier, splitting it apart, and flowing all over the ground. Inside the barrier, it was dead silent. Everyone was paying attention to the chef's challenge. Rincho was engrossed in frying the cod meat. The quality of the meat was very special, and it tested his control over the flames. Therefore, he did not dare to relax at all. His mental energy seemed to have materialized, spreading out from time to time and completely enveloping the frying pan. His will had caused the surrounding space to become a little stagnant. His mental energy was very strong, so his control over the heat was getting better and better. The cod meat had already started to turn yellow, and the aroma wafted out like silk, entering everyone's nostrils. Many people had already started to exclaim and gasp in surprise, because they realized that Owner Boo's cooking skills seemed to be suppressed. On the other hand, on Bufong's side, Bufong had just finished processing the fish. The kitchen knife in his hand slashed the back of the fish, leaving many traces. With a casual flick, the fish fell into the big bowl that Bufong had prepared. The bowl was filled with moist starch, which was evenly distributed on the fish. The black turtle constellation Wak appeared in a cloud of black smoke. It was incomparably heavy, bringing with it a pressure that made people's hearts tremble. Bufang opened his mouth and spat out a ball of golden flame. The flame entered the bottom of the wok and burned, causing the temperature in the wok to rise rapidly. After pouring oil into the wok, the flame continued to burn, causing the temperature to rise higher and higher. In the end, the oil in the wok splashed and sizzled. Bufang reached out his hand, sweeping the surface of the wok. After sensing the temperature of the oil in the wok, he grabbed the fish's tail and placed the processed fish into the wok. As soon as the fish entered the wok, the oil in the wok started to change. White foam continuously emerged. Because the temperature of the oil in the wok was very high, the fish reacted quickly after it entered the wok. The knife's edge quickly opened. The fish began to turn golden. Bufang used the knife in his hand to pick up the fish, holding it above the wok. This way, the fish wouldn't stick to the bottom of the wok. After the fish was fried, Bufang pushed the fish aside, forming a bow shape, and continued to fry the fish. Next, he made sure that every part of the fish's body was evenly affected by the temperature of the oil. A thick aroma of the fish arose from the black turtle constellation wok. Steam surged up, gathering above the wok, turning into a misty white mist that blocked people's vision. With a flick of the knife, the deep-fried fish was scooped out of the wok, placing it on a porcelain plate that he had prepared beforehand. On the other side, Bufang took out spirit herbs filled with spirit energy from the system's dimensional bag. The kitchen knife in his hand danced in the air, turning into streaks of flowing light. The flowing light flickered as it sliced the spirit herbs into pieces. Some oil was poured into the wok. After heating it up, Bufang poured the minced spirit herbs into the wok. He shook the wok and stir-fried. The flame shot up into the sky, dazzling and eye-catching. The aroma of herbs and coriander permeated the surroundings. Using the spatula to draw circles in the wok, Bufang poured the mixed starch into the black turtle constellation wok, thickening the soup in the wok. He took out a black jar, which was filled with a kind of spirit vinegar, which had a thick sour taste. Besides the vinegar taste, the sweet and sour fish also had a sweet taste. Bufang placed the rock sugar provided by the system into the jar. After cutting it open, the thick soup was sticky, sweet, and sour. Gulp, gulp. The thick soup was boiling and bubbling. Bufang's face was calm. Using the spatula, he scooped up some of the soup and put it into his mouth. The sweet and sour taste instantly filled his taste buds. Smacking his lips, Bufang nodded his head in satisfaction. In the next instant, he raised his hand, and the black turtle constellation wok floated up. With a sweep of the spatula, the boiling hot sweet and sour soup was scooped out and poured over the deep-fried dragon-transforming carp. Sizzle, sizzle. Steam instantly spread from the fish's body, and the fish seemed to let out a sharp whistle. Under the shocked gazes of the crowd, the deep-fried dragon-transforming carp suddenly shook. Its tail flipped up, and its mouth opened. Throwing the spatula into the wok, Bufang took a step back and gently exhaled. After wiping off the sticky soup on the porcelain plate, he made the plate clean. Westlake's sweet and sour fish. Done. Bufang nodded his head in satisfaction and said softly. After finishing everything, Bufang raised his head and looked at Wenrinchou in the distance. Wenrinchou had also finished cooking his dish. The corners of his mouth curled up, and he seemed to feel something as he looked at Bufang. Their gazes collided in the air. Bufang was expressionless, while Wenrinchou's lips curled up slightly. His eyes lowered, looking at Bufang. "You're going to lose." Wenrinchou grinned. He was incomparably confident. His condition today was very good, and he didn't make any mistakes. Whether it was the control of the flame or the excessive amount of spiritual energy in the dish, they were all perfectly realized and completed. On the white porcelain plate, a piece of golden brown cod meat was constantly emitting a fragrant aroma. Dark green spirit herbs and leaves decorated the dish, making it look very exquisite. Wenrinchou held the dish and nodded his head at Bufang. Outside the light screen, the rain was getting heavier and the pitter-patter of the rain was deafening. However, inside the light screen, it was silent. Everyone took in a deep breath, not daring to breathe out loud. Da-da-da. Wenrincho held his dish and walked in front of Bufang. Honor Boo, my pan-fried codfish is done. I wonder if you're done with your dish? Wenrincho asked with a smile. His face was full of confidence. Bufang nodded his head. He held the Westlake sweet and sour fish with one hand and walked into the restaurant. How do we rate the dish? Wenrincho asked. Let everyone rate it. Bufang didn't turn around. He walked straight into the restaurant, found a table, and placed the dish on it. Wenrincho shrugged his shoulders and glanced at the crowd. He didn't say anything and placed his dish on a table. Bufang's words stunned everyone. In the next moment, everyone revealed a look of surprise. Let everyone rate it? Honorable wanted them to rate it? Did that mean that they would be able to taste these two dishes? Everyone was so excited that they couldn't breathe. The aroma that permeated the air made it hard for them to resist the urge to eat. Now that they could taste it for themselves, they were naturally happy. Hades dispersed the light screen. The rainwater in the sky immediately fell mercilessly, making pitter-patter sounds as it hit the ground. However, the diners didn't care. Their cultivation wasn't weak, and they could withstand the rain for a while. Their main focus was still on the dishes. Everyone held their chopsticks, looking forward to tasting the delicacy. Hades squeezed to the front, his handsome face revealing a look of anticipation. He held his chopsticks and looked at Bufang's dish, then at Wenrincho's dish. The appearance of both dishes was not bad. Bufang's Westlake sweet and sour fish looked like it was made of glass. It was beautiful, crystal clear, and the meat was emitting a rich fragrance. The sweet and sour soup increased one's appetite just by smelling it. As for the pan-fried codfish, it was as luxurious as a noble's. The plate was exquisite, and the fish was fried just right like a piece of gold. Hades smacked his lips, but in the end, he chose Wenrincho's pan-fried codfish. The fish was crisp and tender. As soon as the chopsticks fell, he picked up a piece of meat. The fish was golden yellow, and there was a warm mist on it. It was crystal clear. He stuffed the fish into his mouth. Hades's brows twitched. The rich fragrance bloomed in his mouth like a flood, surging and surging. He nodded slightly. The fish was filled with the flavor of the sea. It was as if Hades was surfing in the sea, enduring the crashing waves. That comfortable feeling made Hades's eyes reveal a look of excitement. Delicious! Hades exhaled a breath of hot air, praising. Wenrincho looked at the man who called himself Hades, who seemed to be conquered by his dish, and the corners of his mouth couldn't help but curl up. Bufang was very calm, and he didn't panic at all. He didn't care about Wenrincho's provocative gaze. After tasting Wenrincho's pan-fried codfish, Hades turned his chopsticks to Bufang's Westlake sweet and sour fish. His chopsticks fell, and the fish was picked up. The thick soup seemed to have been pulled out. Steam rolled, and the fragrance filled the air. As soon as it entered the mouth, Hades's eyes lit up. Chapter 602. The silk-like thick broth was stretched, translucent, and emitted a boiling hot fragrance. The sweet and sour taste assaulted one's nostrils, making one salivate. The Nether King licked his lips, narrowing his eyes as he placed the piece of fish into his mouth. His eyes narrowed in delight. The sweet and sour taste exploded instantly, causing Hades's eyes to widen. If Wenrincho's pan-fried codfish gave people the feeling of surfing in the ocean, then Bufang's Westlake sweet and sour fish gave people the feeling of resting on a boat in a small lake. The two dishes presented people with two completely different styles. That sweet and sour broth was delicious, and with just one mouthful, Hades felt that his appetite was completely stimulated. That feeling was indescribable, and it was very unique. The confident smile on Wenrincho's face slightly froze. From Hades's expression, he seemed to have a bad premonition, because he realized that Hades did not seem to be particularly optimistic about his dish. This made him a little flustered. His original confidence was also slightly crumbling. Cooking with fish was the cooking method that he was most familiar with. If he still lost in this way, Wenrincho really did not know what to say. This monster of Bufong was really beyond his expectations. If Bufong was from a valley of gluttony, it would still be fine. However, Bufong was not from the valley of gluttony. Since he was not from the valley of gluttony, he could actually cook such delicious dishes. It was not any weaker than him, who came from the valley of gluttony. This guy, where did this monster come from? Little Ha, how is it? How is the taste? Looking at Hades's face, full of enjoyment, he felt as if there were 10,000 little ants crawling in his heart. Youngsters nowadays? Not bad. Hades nodded his head, and his gaze fell on the West Lake's sweet and sour fish, staring at it without blinking. These two dishes taste good, although they're not as good as the spicy strips, but forget it, don't talk anymore. When he heard Hades mention the chili strip again, Nangong Wuk was speechless. He waved his hand and interrupted him. He intended to taste it himself. Hades, whose words were interrupted, glared at him. How could youngsters nowadays be so mischievous? Can't you let I finish? Bufong was very calm. He pulled a chair and sat down. He curled up on the chair and yawned lazily. The diners were all excited. After tasting the two dishes, their faces revealed an intoxicated look. The rain outside the restaurant gradually became lighter. It was originally a heavy downpour, but now there were only a few light drizzles floating in the air. Because of the rain, the air became a bit chilly, but the diners' hearts were burning hot. Soon, the dishes were finished. The diners had finished tasting the two dishes. Everyone had an intoxicated look on their faces as they enjoyed the aftertaste of the experience. Inside the Cloud Mist restaurant, Wenrincho's face had already turned completely pale. His body was trembling slightly, and his forehead was covered with fine beads of sweat. There was even fear in his eyes. From the expressions of the crowd, he seemed to have seen the result. This result was hard for him to accept. He didn't dare to believe it. He didn't want to believe it. He took out the dish he was best at, but the result didn't seem to be what he wanted. This was a chef's challenge. Because of his confidence, he started a chef's challenge. Although he was a little regretful when he started the chef's challenge, he still had unparalleled confidence in his culinary skills. However, from the results of the competition, his confidence seemed to be a little laughable. After tasting the two dishes, the crowd had already made a decision in their hearts. Rumble. Just when the last mouthful of the dish was tasted, a huge phantom of a giant beast suddenly appeared on Wenrincho's body. That phantom had a huge mouth. When it opened, it seemed as though it was going to swallow the heaven and earth. It was incomparably terrifying. A magic array emerged from the phantom and instantly enveloped the people who had tasted the dishes. However, when the light from the magic array came into contact with Hades, it naturally dispersed. It couldn't lock on a Hades. Hades' mouth twitched. He shook his head, and his jet-black hair fluttered. That thing is really cowardly. Two choices appeared in the minds of everyone who was enveloped by the light. Bufong's and Wenrincho's bodies also shone with light. Roar. It was like the roar of a giant beast. Everyone felt a little dazed. In the next moment, it was as though there was a deafening voice whispering in their ears, telling them the rules. Wenrincho's body was a little weak, and his forehead was covered with beads of sweat. His body staggered backward. It was as though he was going to fall on his butt. Bufong glanced at him indifferently. With a sweep of his leg, a chair instantly flew out and caught Wenrincho's body. Wenrincho's whole body was limp on the chair, and his face was pale. On his and Bufong's bodies, light began to shine. It seemed as though the diners who had tasted the dishes were making their choice. But a unique buzzing sound rang out. In the next moment, the light on Bufong's body became incomparably bright. That light instantly overshadowed Wenrincho's light. Wenrincho looked at the light on Bufong's body in a daze, and then looked at the light on his body. Comparing the two, it was like comparing the light of a firefly to the bright moon. His confidence instantly collapsed at this moment. This time, it was a real collapse. in the inheritance of the supreme blade tyrant. Even if he lost, he was just unwilling. His confidence didn't waver because he knew that his expertise wasn't in that kind of cooking, but in cooking with fish. But this time, Bufong gave him a head-on blow. In the chef's challenge, he was utterly defeated. Everyone recovered from their daze. The magic array gradually disappeared, turning into a stream of light that was swallowed by the huge shadow entering its mouth. Chef's challenge. Bufong wins when Rincho loses. With a sound like the evening drum and morning bell, everyone's heart trembled. Their gazes fell on Bufong and Rincho. Bufong's expression was very calm. He curled up on the chair, looking rather satisfied. It was as though he had already expected the result and wasn't the slightest bit worried. As for Rincho, at this moment, his face was already pale. He lost. He really lost. The chef's challenge has ended, and the oath punishment has begun. Rincho will be stripped of his right to cook and will never be a chef again. His kitchen knife will be taken away, and he will be returned to his opponent. Rincho's eyes were lifeless. Above the huge shadow in the void, there seemed to be a pair of invisible eyes that fell on his body, making him feel as though all the energy in his body had been sucked out. This was the price of the chef's challenge. He lost, and he had to pay a price that he couldn't bear. Bufong was slightly taken aback, and he raised his eyebrows. He saw the ice crystal kitchen knife in Rincho's hand appear, flying towards him. This was the so-called depriving kitchen knife, depriving the right to cook. This chef's challenge was really a little cruel. Bufong frowned, looking at the pail Rincho, and the corner of his mouth twitched. He didn't pity him, because he knew that if he was the one who lost today, the person who would be deprived of his kitchen knife would be him, and the person who would never be able to cook again. When Rincho first proposed a chef's challenge, he probably had the intention to completely cut off Bufong's escape route. However, he didn't expect that Bufong's true strength was really so strong. Bufong wasn't broad-minded, and he was even a little petty. The ice crystal kitchen knife flew over, landing in Bufong's hand. Bufong raised his hand, holding the kitchen knife. The ice-blue kitchen knife glowed, as though it was a piece of deep-sea ice, chilling to the bone. There was even a faint cold air drifting on it. "Good knife," Bufong praised. He stretched out his finger and stroked the kitchen knife. The bone-chilling feeling that made his skin tighten made Bufong's mouth twitch. Although this kitchen knife wasn't as good as his dragon bone kitchen knife, it was still a rare good knife. Rincho's eyes were filled with grief. He looked at the kitchen knife in Bufong's hand, and his mouth opened, wanting to say something. There was a strong binding force on his body that made him feel extremely uncomfortable. That was the binding force of the Tao Ye's oath. Bufong glanced at Rincho, and the corner of his mouth twitched. His fingers moved, and instantly, the ice-blue kitchen knife started to spin in his hand, blossoming into a dazzling flower. Rincho watched, and his heart twitched. Rincho felt as though his heart was about to be torn apart. Congratulations to the host for defeating the Valley of Gluttony's second-grade chef, Rincho, and obtaining his kitchen knife. You are rewarded with a knife cabinet, which is used to collect kitchen knives and chef challenges. On the road to becoming the god of cooking, one will fall behind. The knife cabinet is not only to collect the kitchen knives of those who failed, but also to remind the host to continuously cultivate his culinary skills and work hard on the road to becoming the god of cooking. The system's solemn and serious voice resounded in Bufong's mind. In the next moment, Bufong's mind trembled. A wave will spread out. White spots of light appeared in front of him and turned into a teleportation array. Within it, a purplish-red, antique sandalwood cabinet appeared. Everyone was slightly surprised by the sudden appearance of the cabinet. When Rincho saw the cabinet, his eyes suddenly turned bloodshot, and he let out a roar. He wasn't unfamiliar with this kind of cabinet. In the Valley of Gluttony, many culinary geniuses would use this kind of cabinet to collect the kitchen knives of those who failed the chef challenge. This was a humiliation to every loser. I hate it. Rincho was extremely angry, and the blood in his body was trembling. Bufong glanced at him indifferently, and his expression didn't change. He opened the cabinet, and it was empty. However, there were many exquisite knife holders standing elegantly. After placing the ice crystal kitchen knife into the cabinet, Bufong looked at the lonely kitchen knife lying in the cabinet and suddenly became silent. Just like what the system said, the culinary path was like the martial path. Although there were some differences, it was ultimately a path to the peak. In the competition of the Great Tao, only the winner could be eternal. Bufong's goal was to become the god of cooking, so he naturally couldn't slack off. Cultivating his culinary skills was the most fundamental. Otherwise, there would be a day when his dragon bone kitchen knife would also be lying in someone else's cabinet. This is a warning for me, and also a reminder for me. Bufong muttered to himself, when Rincho's body trembled, and he finally slumped on the chair. His whole body was drained of energy, and he had nothing left to live for. He knew that it was all his own doing. Why? Why did I lose? I am a traveler of the Valley of Gluttony in the continent, and I'm a second-grade chef of the Valley of Gluttony. Why did I lose? When Rincho muttered with a soulless gaze, Bufong put away the knife cabinet and turned to look at Wen Rincho. Isn't it normal for you to lose? You're good at cooking fish, but I'm not good at cooking fish. You used what you were good at, but you still couldn't beat me. What regret do you have after losing? Bufong said expressionlessly. Bufong was not good at cooking fish. When Rincho's eyeballs trembled, he raised his head, looked at Bufong, and asked in a low voice, "Then what are you good at?" Glancing at Wen Rincho, Bufong gently exhaled, and with his hands behind his back, he faced the direction of the kitchen, giving off an unfathomable aura. Everyone was curious, and they pricked up their ears. They were looking forward to Bufong's answer. After a long time, a faint voice rang out. "Anyway, it's not fish." Chapter 603. Central Hidden Dragon Continent, Valley of Gluttony. A white-haired elder stood by the window with his hands clasped behind his back. He looked at the sparkling blue lake, his face expressionless. He watched indifferently. He watched the mottled splendor reflected off the surface of the lake under the illumination of his gaze. He watched the dazzling fish that leaped out of the lake and swung their tails. He gently exhaled. In the room, a figure stood respectfully. He did not speak, nor did he have any other attitude. He just stood there quietly. After a long time, the old man turned around and looked at the figure. Wen Rincho, that brat, should have lost. His ice-soul kitchen knife was taken away. He's really regressing the more he trains. He actually lost to a chef from outside the valley. This is a disgrace to our Valley of Gluttony. The old man's wrinkled face trembled slightly as he said with a hint of anger. The figure standing respectfully suddenly trembled, and a look of disbelief appeared on his face. How was this possible? How could Junior Wen Rincho lose? The name on the tablet of gluttony has already dimmed. The ice-soul kitchen knife has also lost contact with the Valley of Gluttony. Do you think Wen Rincho won? The elder glanced at the figure with an ugly expression. As a traveler of the Valley of Gluttony in the Hidden Dragon Continent, he was the representative of the Valley of Gluttony. Even if he was not as strong as the experts of the outside world, how could he lose in culinary skills? The Valley of Gluttony walked the culinary path. Culinary skills were the pride of the disciples of the Valley of Gluttony. It was impossible for them to lose to a chef from the outside world. Now, follow my instructions and bring that disgraceful Wen Rincho back to me. Also, investigate the chef who defeated Wen Rincho. If it's possible, bring him back to the Valley of Gluttony. To be able to defeat Wen Rincho outside the Valley of Gluttony means that this chef's talent is absolutely astonishing. If he doesn't obey, then kill him. The dignity of the Valley of Gluttony cannot be violated. The elder said with his hands behind his back. His voice was cold, causing the figure to tremble slightly. "Disciple will go now." The figure responded and left the room. The elder's eyes were deep. He turned his head and continued to look at the lake. The calm lake suddenly trembled and waves shot up to the sky. A huge spirit beast poked its head out of the lake. It closed its huge mouth, which was filled with ferocious fangs, and swallowed the fish that had leaped out of the water. Bufong's answer stunned everyone. The next moment, everyone felt like vomiting blood. When did Ownerbu become so mischievous? We know you're not good at fish, but what are you good at? Tell us. You aroused our curiosity, but you didn't tell us. You will be caught and drowned in a pig cage. Bufong really had no intention of telling everyone the answer. He stood up and stretched. With a wave of his hand, he cleaned up the outside world. Then, he turned around and looked at everyone. Next, business as usual. Under everyone's dumbfounded gazes, he turned around and entered the kitchen. When Rincho's face was pale, as though his soul had been sucked out of his body. He did not doubt the accuracy of Bufong's words. He believed that Bufong was not good at fish. He actually lost to a little chef who was not good at cooking fish in his area of expertise. How could he, a traveler from the Valley of Gluttony, have the face to face the people from the Valley of Gluttony? I lost. When Rincho was extremely depressed. Suddenly, he turned his head towards the direction of the kitchen and said fiercely, "Your culinary skills are so good. Why didn't you join the Valley of Gluttony?" Bufong, who had walked to the entrance of the kitchen, stopped in his tracks. When Rincho's eyes gradually revealed a crazed look. The defeat was a huge blow to him, especially when Bufong was just a chef from the mainland and not from the Valley of Gluttony. If he lost to a chef from the Valley of Gluttony, Rincho would not be so disappointed. However, he lost to a chef that he had always looked down on. Rincho felt as though his heart had been hollowed out. Valley of Gluttony? Is it that great? Bufong glanced at Rincho and said calmly. His words seemed to carry a trace of disdain. That disdain almost made Rincho furious. The Valley of Gluttony was his pride. Bufong's disdainful attitude had deeply provoked him. The business will continue. Unauthorized people, please leave the restaurant. Otherwise, you will be treated as a troublemaker. Bufong said one last sentence and went into the kitchen. The diners looked at each other and finally started to line up, looking forward to eating Bufong's dishes. Rincho's face was extremely ugly. He staggered out of the cloud, mist restaurant. Standing at the entrance of the restaurant, he raised both of his hands with a face full of despair. His hands were trembling. Looking at his own hands, even his lips were trembling. Chef's challenge. He lost. His right to cook was taken away, and his kitchen knife was also taken away. Now he had nothing. The person who caused him to lose everything was that Bufong. As a member of the Valley of Gluttony, he was very clear that the Valley of Gluttony would definitely send someone to fetch him back. As for Bufong, because he defeated him, he would be noticed by the Valley of Gluttony. They would bring him to the valley and invest a lot of resources to nurture him. Losing his right to cook, he would be assigned to be a servant. He would become a target of elimination by the Valley of Gluttony. From then on, Bufong would have a meteoric rise, and he, Rincho, would never be able to make a name for himself. He was not willing. Buzz, with a roar, Rincho's eyes turned red. Following his roar, a magic array gradually appeared in front of him. In the next moment, a figure slowly walked out from the magic array. Rincho stopped roaring. Looking at the figure, his eyes narrowed. The teleportation array of the Pill Palace in Heavenly Mist City flashed. Instantly, several figures were teleported out by the array. These figures were in a sorry state. Their bodies were covered with wounds, and their auras were extremely weak. Mubai walked out from the crowd with a face full of exhaustion. His face was terrifyingly pale. He felt a little sullen. This time, entering the Heaven's Secret territory, he had suffered a huge loss. Not only did he not comprehend any alchemy techniques, but he had also suffered a huge loss. Who knew that a large group of terrifying beasts would suddenly appear in the Heaven's Secret territory? Those were not the beasts of the Hidden Dragon continent. Their battle prowess was extremely terrifying. Countless experts were killed while fighting against these beasts. Because there was a lack of manpower, all the experts in the Heaven's Secret territory had to participate in the battle. Mubai, who was fortunate enough to personally witness the battle, was still trembling. Those beasts were extremely terrifying, simply invincible. Even if the fifth elder made a move, he could not completely suppress these beasts. According to the fifth elder, these beasts came from a place called the Netherworld. Moreover, these beasts that appeared were just ordinary beasts of the Netherworld. The truly terrifying beasts had yet to appear. But even so, it almost caused the entire Heaven's Secret territory to fall into enemy hands. Once the Heaven's Secret territory fell and was occupied by the beasts of the Netherworld, it would directly threaten the hidden dragon continent. As Mubai thought about these matters, his entire being was in a trance. Fortunately, the fifth elder had spent a great deal of effort to seal the ruins, so those ferocious beasts shouldn't appear for the time being. However, no one knew how long that array could last. Returning to the hidden dragon continent, Mubai felt as if he had obtained a new life. He took a deep breath and felt that his entire being was much more energetic. However, what surprised him was that in the Pill Pagoda, everyone was in a hurry. "What's wrong?" Mubai pulled a person over and asked curiously. "You guys just returned from the secret territory and don't know. The ancient Shura city is about to start a war with our Pill Palace. That savage Shura sovereign even threatened to flatten our Pill Palace." An alchemist said with a face full of worry. "How is that possible? Is this Shura sovereign stupid? Although the ancient Shura city is strong, they might not be able to deal with our Pill Palace, right? The Pill Palace is the place where all the alchemists in the Hidden Dragon continent gather." "Is he trying to go against the entire continent?" Mubai said. "Sigh, you will find out soon. This time, the Shura sovereign is really ruthless. Not only did he send out all his forces, but he also invited the experts of the Hidden Dragon Royal Court to help. This time, our Pill Palace is really in danger." After saying that, the alchemist no longer cared about Mubai. He shook his head and left with a face full of worry. The ancient Shura city coming out in full force was actually not something that worried the Pill Palace. What worried them was the experts of the Hidden Dragon Royal Court. The Hidden Dragon Royal Court was the supreme existence of the Hidden Dragon continent. Their every move would affect every force. If the people of the Hidden Dragon Royal Court really wanted to destroy the Pill Palace, then the Pill Palace would really be in danger. From afar, Grandmaster Xian Ming slowly walked over. He patted Mubai's shoulder, his face a little tired. "Don't worry, the Palace Master has already gone to the Hidden Dragon Royal Court to inquire about the details. There will be an answer soon. Even if the Hidden Dragon Royal Court really wants to destroy our Pill Palace will not sit still," Grandmaster Xian Ming said solemnly. Heavenly Shine City, the second largest city in the Pill Palace. Outside the city, a large number of experts stood. These experts were all from the ancient Shura city. They had a head full of red hair, and each of them carried a long red spear on their back. The army of the ancient Shura city was famous for being a terrifying army in the Hidden Dragon continent, because their killing power was extremely strong. A series of rumbling sounds rang out. Every time the explosions resounded, a long spear that covered the sky would shoot up into the sky. Like rain, the spears would fall and smash on the city gate. The majestic city gate of Heavenly Shine City was smashed with a loud bang, and the city wall was full of holes. Grandmaster Yao Guang clasped his hands behind his back and wore a neat alchemist robe. He stood solemnly on the city wall of Heavenly Shine City. He narrowed his eyes as he looked at the densely packed army of the ancient Shura city. A faint wave of anger surged in his heart. The ancient Shura city is too much, Grandmaster Yao Guang said coldly. In the army below the city, a blood-colored tent was set up. Among them, the young-looking Shura sovereign was sitting on a chair. He was wearing casual clothes and looked extremely comfortable. He didn't look like he was in a battle at all. Instead, he looked like he was out on a vacation. The Shura saintess was wearing a military uniform, which accentuated her beautiful figure. She was extremely beautiful. On the lower left side of the Shura sovereign, a middle-aged man was sitting cross-legged with his eyes closed. The man's aura was calm and steady, giving off an oppressive feeling. He was even stronger than the Shura sovereign. Suddenly, the middle-aged man's eyes opened slowly. A bright light flashed, and the entire tent seemed to light up. The Shurasanus's heart shuddered. This middle-aged man was indeed terrifying. He was indeed an expert of the hidden dragon royal court. Shura, sovereign, I'm here for the netherworld woman and the black dog that you've mentioned. I don't have time to waste with you here. Let's end this quickly. The middle-aged man's gaze landed on the Shura sovereign as he furrowed his brows. What's the rush? I know that information about the netherworld is very important to the hidden dragon royal court. However, my Shura army hasn't been in a battle for a long time. I have to let them practice, right? Furthermore, I said that I would flatten the Pill Palace, so I will definitely do it. Don't be anxious. The Shura sovereign's lips curled up into a devilish smile. The netherworld woman and that dog won't be able to escape. Wait until my Shura army flattens Heavenly Shine City and obliterates Heavenly Pill City. Then, we will gather at Heavenly Mist City and help you capture that dog alive. Chapter 604. The rain had yet to stop. The rain continued to fall from the sky in a steady stream, as thin as a strand of hair. When Rincho's body froze on the spot, his face pale and terrified. His lips were trembling, and his eyes were reflecting a bright light. In front of him, an incandescent teleportation formation flickered, its brilliance dazzling. An incomparably mysterious fluctuation spread out from the teleportation array and filled the surroundings. A blurry figure slowly walked out from the teleportation array. Da-da-da. The footsteps were very clear, and it not only shocked Rincho, but also the customers who were queuing up. None of them expected that a teleportation array would suddenly appear here. Walking out of the teleportation array, it was extremely flashy. Were people so extravagant these days? Coming to Owner Boo's place to eat. They actually used the teleportation array to travel. Of course, this was just what they thought. In reality, no one recognized the person who walked out of the array, except for Rincho, who was frozen on the spot. It was a young man dressed in a spotless chef robe. His light blue hair was dreamy, and his fair skin and slender figure made many people's eyes light up. However, the crowd was curious as to why this person was wearing a chef robe. Junior brother Rincho, it seems like you're not in a good state. The light around the young man disappeared, and he looked at Rincho indifferently. The corner of his mouth twitched, and he seemed to have a disdainful smile. You? Why is it you? What are you doing here? Rincho's eyes revealed a trace of fear, and his body trembled violently as he growled. The arrogance on the young man's face became more intense, and his gaze towards Rincho became more disdainful. You still have the cheek to ask me why I'm here? Don't you know what you've done? The young man said indifferently. You actually initiated a chef's challenge outside the valley, and more importantly, you lost. You've been stripped of your ice soul kitchen knife and your right to cook. You've already lost your right to be a chef of the Valley of Gluttony. The surrounding customers looked at Rincho and the young man, and their eyes slightly narrowed. What was going on? This young man knew Rincho. Moreover, he was wearing a chef robe. Could it be that this young man was also a chef? Looking at that young man's arrogant look, could it be that his culinary skills were better than Rincho's? I just made a mistake. Rincho's face was completely drained of blood, and there was even a hint of despair in his eyes. He knew that this guy was here to decide his future. They were here to bring him back to the Valley of Gluttony to receive his punishment. Senior brother, spare me. I don't want to go back to the Valley of Gluttony. Rincho's eyes gradually softened. He could no longer bear it when he thought of the miserable state he would be in when he returned to the Valley of Gluttony. The disdain in the young man's eyes intensified. Rincho, you really disappoint me more and more. As his words faded, the young man opened his palm. Within his palm, a cluster of green flames was burning. As a chef of the Valley of Gluttony, you are a member of the Valley of Gluttony in life, and a ghost of the Valley of Gluttony in death. You can't get rid of it. The young man said coldly. His words caused many people in the surroundings to feel a chill run down their spines. Within the green flame, a white bun appeared. With a flick of his hand, it flew towards Wenrincho. Wenrincho looked at the bun in fear, his face full of rejection. I don't want it. Zhou Tong, how dare you treat me like this? Wenrincho's figure retreated continuously. With a roar, he turned around and fled into the distance. He wanted to escape. Once he ate that bun, he would have no hope left. However, the young man called Zhou Tong's mouth twitched. No wonder teacher is so disappointed in you. Wenrincho, you have really brought too much shame to the Valley of Gluttony. Zhou Tong said calmly. As his words fell, his figure instantly appeared in front of Wenrincho. With a wave of his hand, a jade talisman appeared. He crushed the jade talisman, and a strange wave of energy spread out from it. Light flowed out and bound Wenrincho, making him unable to move. Eat the whole bun, then follow me back to the valley and stay with the servants. From today onwards, you are no longer a second-grade chef of the Valley of Gluttony. Zhou Tong chuckled. He pinched Wenrincho's chin, and true energy surged into his fingers, stimulating Wenrincho's nerves and causing him to open his mouth wide. Stuffing the bun into his mouth, Wenrincho's eyes instantly turned lifeless. Above his head, two blurry spirit beasts appeared. As the bun entered his stomach, the spirit beasts dispersed like smoke. Gently patting Wenrincho's shoulder, a chain wrapped around Wenrincho's body. After putting him into the cage, Bu Fong stored him away. Only after doing all this did Zhou Tong let out a light breath. As if sensing the gazes of the surrounding customers, he was slightly stunned. He turned his head and smiled warmly. Oh, this is actually a restaurant? Could the chef of this restaurant be the one who defeated my junior brother in the chef's challenge? Zhou Tong said with a smile. His voice was gentle, giving off a feeling of spring breeze. However, no one dared to treat him as a gentle person. The previous scene was witnessed by many. The image of Wenrincho being forced to eat the poisonous bun lingered in many people's minds. This was an extremely vicious person. This restaurant is really small. Zhou Tong stood outside the restaurant and swept his gaze across it. The corner of his mouth twitched as he said calmly. The rain in the sky pattered down, landing on his body. It was burned by the green flames on the surface of his body, turning into steam, causing Zhou Tong's entire person to appear extremely elegant. The surrounding people looked at him in silence. Zhou Tong strode forward slowly, passing through the crowd and stepping into the Cloud Mist restaurant. If you want to eat Ownerbu's dishes, you have to queue up. Someone looked at Zhou Tong's back and said with a frown. Zhou Tong was stunned. Standing at the entrance of the restaurant, he slowly turned his head and looked at the person who spoke. His gaze was extremely sharp, and his entire body emitted a majestic pressure that made people's hearts tremble. There are restaurants that are worthy of me queuing up, but not this one, Zhou Tong said calmly. The corner of his mouth twitched, and his entire person emitted a sense of arrogance. To be able to defeat Wenrincho in the chef's challenge, it means that this chef has some skills. Not bad. He has a bright future. I can give him a chance and get him some pointers. Arrogant. How could this person be so arrogant? He actually dared to say that he knew how to cook for Owner Bu. Who did this guy think he was? How could he have the qualifications to teach Owner Bu how to cook? Who did he think he was? Everyone was suppressing their anger in their hearts, but the pressure from Zhou Tong's body caused them to be momentarily speechless, even though they were furious. Zhou Tong looked at the group of people who dared not speak and sneered. People outside of the Hidden Dragon Royal Court were indeed a group of ignorant people. The Valley of Gluttony was a unique existence in the Hidden Dragon Royal Court. Usually, the visitors were the geniuses of the Royal Court, the true heroes of the continent. The Hidden Dragon Royal Court was known as the center of the Hidden Dragon continent, and it was the strongest force. He, Zhou Tong, as a first-grade chef of the Valley of Gluttony, usually faced the holy sons and saintesses of the royal court. Hence, his body naturally developed a pressure. He was arrogant because he had the right to be arrogant. He looked down on these people because he had seen the real top people. With his hands behind his back, Zhou Tong sneered softly, turned around, and stepped into the restaurant. The diners in the queue were somewhat silent, and only the light sound of the rain falling on the ground could be heard. Once Zhou Tong entered the restaurant, his eyebrows arched. Interesting. The spiritual energy in this restaurant is unexpectedly thick. The layout is quite stylish and warm. Zhou Tong entered the restaurant, looking around. It's a pity that it's too small. It's just a small restaurant, but it does have the style of the Valley of Gluttony. Zhou Tong's gaze swept across the crowd, landing on the path understanding tree in the distance. A path understanding tree, a very ordinary tree. Under the tree, there was a black dog. This dog was a little too fat. It seemed to be very meaty. Zhou Tong glanced at Blackie, slightly surprised. The air was filled with this fragrance. Zhou Tong narrowed his eyes, sniffed, and nodded his head. As expected of a chef who could defeat Wenrinchou, this dish's fragrance was very good. Slurp, slurp. A series of slurping sounds rang out. Zhou Tong was startled. Looking over, he saw an incomparably handsome man holding a red object and continuously sucking on it. The red object emitted a fragrant and spicy aroma. That thing is edible. This time, Zhou Tong was really shocked. Hades squinted his eyes, his face full of enjoyment as he sucked on the spicy strip. Suddenly, he felt a look of looking at an idiot, and his heart instantly became unhappy. Turning his head to look, he saw a guy wearing a chef robe, staring at him with a face full of disdain. Biting a spicy strip, Hades looked at Zhou Tong with a slanted gaze. "Young man, what are you looking at? Have you never seen a handsome guy eat spicy strips? Naughty." Zhou Tong was stunned, and in the next moment, the corner of his mouth twitched. "Naughty your sister. The way you eat is so inelegant, and you don't want others to look? What kind of customer is this? Little Ha, this guy is definitely looking down on you. Actually, I also want to say that the way you eat the spicy strip, you look really mesmerizing." Nangong Wuk laughed out loud, and, after stuffing a piece of meat with one in essence energy into his mouth, he said to Hades. Hades instantly raised his eyebrows, turning his head to look at Nangong Wuk, and the two of them started to bicker. Zhou Tong shook his head. This kind of customer, if he was in his restaurant, he would definitely be chased out. Not paying attention to the two of them, he turned his head to look at the menu behind him, and on it were all the dishes sold in the restaurant. Buddha jumps over the wall soup for 10,000 crystals. This price is not low, but to be able to defeat Wenrinchou, he must have the confidence to mark this price. Zhou Tong squinted his eyes. Crazy spicy strip? Buddha jumps over the wall soup? Oyster pancake? There are so many dishes I have never seen before. Interesting. Zhou Tong looked at the menu, and a playful smile appeared on his face. Suddenly, he felt an ice-cold aura approaching. He turned his head to look, and a beautiful, ice-cold face came into view. It was a beautiful woman, so beautiful that Zhou Tong, who had seen many saintesses of the royal court, held his breath. So beautiful, Zhou Tong regained his senses, and his eyes instantly lit up. As the dissolute chef of the Valley of Gluttony, his favorite thing was to interact with beautiful women. However, the beauty in front of him was a little cold. The rules of the restaurant are to line up to order, and anyone who cuts the line will be treated as a troublemaker. Yu's pitch-black eyes stared at Zhou Tong, and she calmly said. Zhou Tong slightly raised his eyebrows, and looking at Yu's beautiful face, he could not help but lick his lips. Beauty, what if I insist on not lining up? The F***CK. In the distance, Hades and Nangong Wuk, who were arguing, were instantly shocked. Where did this idiot come from? He actually dared to tease Nethery. Who gave him the courage? Facing that unbridled gaze, Yu was still expressionless, and her red lips slightly opened, and she calmly said, Troublemaker, strip him and throw him out. In the kitchen, half of Xiao Bai's face was revealed, and her purple eyes flickered. Radiance shot out in all directions. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.